Chapter 1561. If you got guts. You've only been in my Thundershock Palace for 2 months, and you dare to slack off. Every year, junior brother Jiaming goes to the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden to pick Flame Dawn grass and has never made any mistakes. Yet this year, when Grandmaster Jinhan opened the cauldron to refine the clear flower pill, you shut down the formation so that Jiaming can't pick the spirit herbs. Tell me, how can Jiaming not be punished? Io, Xiaohua cried out in shock. This is my fault. How can I let senior brother Jiaming suffer? Please report to the deacon. Senior brother is willing to accept the punishment. The disciple on duty looked at Xiaohua and nodded. Fortunately, you're also a responsible man. Let's go follow I in. As the disciple on duty walked into Thundershock Hall, Xiaohua asked tentatively, Senior brother, I have a question, but I don't know if I should ask. The disciple on duty glanced at him and sneered. If you should ask, ask. If you shouldn't ask, don't ask. Xiaohua smiled apologetically. I just want to ask, although the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden is protected by formation, but that formation was also set up by the sex elders. Why don't we ask the elders to break the formation? Or perhaps the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden's token, is there only one? I can tell you're still hoping for a fluke. The disciple didn't find it strange and rolled his eyes. The Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden is very far from my Thundershock Palace. Every year, only Jiaming goes there once when Grandmaster Jinhan is refining the clear flower pill. Normally, no one pays attention to that place, so naturally, there's a spare token. But the strange thing is, when Jiaming couldn't enter the medicinal garden for fear of delaying his refining, he came back to look for the spare token. That token was actually not there and mysteriously disappeared. Disappeared? When did it disappear? Xiaohua was shocked. That token disappeared, which meant that someone could enter and exit the Eastern Ridge Formation at any time. Then, his own safety was not assured. How could he not be shocked? How would I know? The disciple rolled his eyes again. No one went to the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden for hundreds of years. No one paid attention to that spare token for a long time. Even the deacon doesn't know, so how would I know? Xiaohua's eyes turned slightly, and he thought, could it be there's something special in the Eastern Ridge? Looks like I'll have to properly search for it when I get back. The disciple continued, as for asking the elders to break the restriction, only you can think of that. That restriction was set up by the ancestors. Who would dare to disturb them if it wasn't a serious matter? While they were talking, the two of them arrived in front of Side Hall. The disciple told Xiaohua to wait at the door, and he went in to report. Damn it, what should we do now? Xiaohua stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, slightly frowning. He had only been in the Imperial Thunder Sect for less than 100 days, and he had already gotten himself into trouble. Xiaohua already knew what the clear flower pill was. It was a pill used by Foundation establishment stage cultivators to increase their power. Even within the Imperial Thunder Sect, there weren't many of them. Every Foundation establishment stage cultivator only had a small supply every year. If he delayed the concoction of the clear flower pill, he would most likely delay the cultivation of many of the Thunderclap Palace's Foundation establishment cultivators. But no one told me when someone would come to the Eastern Ridge to pick the Flame Dawn grass every year. Xiaohua felt that he was very innocent. Just as Xiaohua was thinking, the disciple came out from the side hall. Behind the disciple were 2 other Foundation establishment stage cultivators. One of them was a middle-aged man in the late stage of Foundation establishment stage. He was tall, had a full beard, and a pair of bell-like eyes. He looked very ferocious. The other one was Zhen Feng, whom Xiaohua met last time. When Xiaohua saw Zhen Feng, a happy expression appeared on his face. He thought to himself, wonderful, this Zhen Feng should know. Before this thought even appeared in his mind, a trace of anger appeared on Zhen Feng's face. He quickly took half a step forward and berated, Xiaohua, what did you do? I told you clearly that day. In another 10 days, it will be the day of picking the Flame Dawn grass. You mustn't be careless. Don't do it yourself. Just wait for your senior brother Jiaming to pick it. You can also watch from the side. Wait until next year. You can pick it yourself. There's no need for your senior brother Jiaming to go. You. on the other hand, sealed the Eastern Ridge's formation. No matter how Zhen Ming called you, you wouldn't come out. You. Sigh. Fortunately, you knew to come to the Thunder Flash Hall to receive your punishment. Let's see how Deacon Jinfeng will deal with it. Xiaohua was slightly stunned. He rolled his eyes and could only sigh. He bowed to the big man and said, Disciple Xiaohua greets Senior Jinfeng. Disciple only cared about cultivation, but forgot his duty and failed to live up to Deacon's kindness. Deacon, please punish me. So, you're Xiaohua. Jinfeng looked Xiaohua up and down a few times, but didn't see anything special. He said with a bit of displeasure, The palace lord specially ordered this deacon to arrange a job for you. This Eastern Ridge was also chosen by you. Why did you slack off when you just arrived at the herb garden? I know you chose the Eastern Ridge because you want to be free and wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. But cultivation is cultivation. You can't forget your duty as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. If every disciple was like you, wouldn't my Imperial Thunder Sect be a plate of loose sand? How can my Imperial Thunder Sect establish itself in the country of Shi? I only use you once a year, and you make a mistake. Moreover, the Eastern Ridge hasn't. Alas, what should this deacon say about you? Disciple knows his mistake. Xiaohua was very helpless. He could only bow again. All right, this deacon doesn't care. But you're still a probationary disciple now. In another 10 months, you'll become an official disciple. You mistake this time. I'm afraid it will affect your assessment. If you don't pass the assessment, you'll still have to leave the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiaohua was very anxious. He stretched out his hand and took out the storage pouch. He said anxiously, Disciple has already picked the flame dawn grass. I don't know if I can atone for my mistake. Atone for your mistake? Zhen Feng sneered and said, What kind of mistake did you make? How can you atone for your mistake? As he spoke, he took the storage pouch and took out the jade box. His face revealed a trace of surprise. He looked at Xiaohua and said, Did you pick this? Yes, disciple picked it. Xiaohua nodded. Yes, there's a special technique to pick this flame dawn grass. The technique isn't easy to grasp. Seeing that the flame dawn grass you picked was clean and didn't damage the roots, it's pretty good. Zhen Feng's expression eased a bit. Ayo, Xiaohua. Zhen Feng suddenly cried out from the side. I remember the last time you came, you were still in the middle of the 10th level of qi refining, right? How? Xiaohua's heart shook. He hurriedly nodded and said, Disciple went into secluded cultivation to break through the bottleneck of the 10th level of qi refining. Of course, Disciple remembered Senior Zhen Feng's instructions and wanted to come out before Senior Brother Zhenming went to the Eastern Ridge, but, I understand. Zhen Feng nodded and said to Zhen Feng, the bottleneck from the 10th level of qi refining to the 11th level of qi refining is really difficult. It's the beginning of the birth of divine sense. Xiaohua wholeheartedly went into secluded cultivation, so it's understandable. Moreover, Xiaohua actually used 2 months to go from the middle of the 10th level of qi refining to the middle of the 11th level of qi refining. As expected of the person that the palace master thinks highly of. If he can't become a disciple of our Thunderclap Palace because of this mistake, it'll really be our Thunderclap Palace's loss. Zhen Feng also nodded slightly, a trace of surprise flashing through his eyes. He'd heard of someone going from the first level of qi refining to the second level of qi refining in 2 months, but he'd never heard of a disciple going from the 10th level of qi refining to the 11th level of qi refining. This Xiaohua was the disciple that Thunder Meng Daoist instructed, so how could he not pay attention to him? Zhen Feng nodded slightly, looking at Xiaohua and saying, Looking at your aptitude, you could be cultivated. However, you must remember that you're now a disciple of the Thunderclap sect, not a disciple of an aristocratic family. When considering anything, you must put the sect's interests first. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua's heart relaxed, and he bowed and said, Since this is your first offense, I won't look into it too deeply. I'll punish you with a year's worth of offerings. Zhen Feng waved his hand and returned the storage pouch to Xiaohua, saying, Let Zhen Feng take you to see Marshal Uncle Zhenyi. If he can let this matter pass, you'll be fine. Otherwise, Zhen Feng didn't finish his words, but Xiao Hua naturally understood. There were only two meanings. If Xiao Hua didn't pass the test in a few months, he'd still be expelled from the mountain. If not, he'd have to ask Thunder Ming Daoist to come out and talk. Xiao Hua's heart was bitter, but he could only put on a smile, saying, "Thank you for your kindness, senior." Soon after, Xiao Hua followed Zhen Feng out of the Thunderclap Palace and flew towards a mountain range. Seeing that there was no one around, Zhen Feng said, "Xiao Hua, picking the blazed dawn grass a few days earlier or later doesn't matter." However, this matter was a bit coincidental. Marshal Uncle Zhen Xie, who was supposed to be refining the blazed dawn pill, suddenly disappeared, and Marshal Uncle Zhen Yi was temporarily left behind by the palace master to refine the blazed dawn pill. Marshal Uncle Zhen Yi originally wanted to go on a trip, so of course he wasn't willing. On top of that, the blazed dawn grass wasn't delivered in time, so he flew into a rage. Zhen Ming was also punished with a year's worth of offerings. When you arrive at Marshal Uncle Zhen Yi's Immortal's Cave, you must properly apologize. If this matter isn't settled, it'll be really bad for you. Seeing that Zhen Feng didn't mention anything about the date of picking the blazed dawn grass, Xiao Hua sneered in his heart. This thing was just empty words. Just now, he didn't mention it in front of Zhen Feng, so there was no need to mention it now. However, Xiao Hua had another plan in his heart. None of the things in Zhen Xie's storage pouch were damaged. I took them all. This guy is actually a pill master, so there must be some pill recipes in there. I'm at the 11th layer of qi refining, and I'm worried about not having any pills to take. When I go back, I'll take a careful look. After flying for 2 hours, they arrived at a place with beautiful mountains and limpid waters. Zhen Feng didn't come any closer, so he sent out a summoning talisman. A moment later, a boy around the 4th layer of qi refining flew out from the mountainside. Looking at the two of them, he laughed and said, "Which one of you is Senior Marshal Brother Xiao Hua?" Xiao Hua took a step forward and cupped his hands, saying, "I am. Senior Marshal Brother Xiao. Please follow I. This senior doesn't need to come." Zhen Feng looked at Xiao Hua, nodded slightly, then turned around and left. "Senior Marshal Brother Xiao, please." The boy stood up and led the way, leading Xiao Hua into the Immortal's Cave. Chapter 1562. After entering the Immortal's Cave, Xiao Hua looked around. Zhen Ye's Immortal's Cave was different from Wu Hen's Immortal's Cave. It was much larger, and there were many mountain paths leading to different places. There were also quite a few Qi condensation disciples walking about. It was very lively. The boy leading the way didn't stop in the slightest. He brought Xiao Hua through several Immortal's Caves until they arrived at the innermost alchemy room. "Wait here." The boy pointed with his hand and entered the alchemy room. "Yes, I understand." Xiao Hua respectfully stood outside the alchemy room, waiting for the summons. However, a moment after the disciple entered, a divine sense swept over Xiao Hua's body. After that, no one paid attention to Xiao Hua. Not only did the disciple not come out, but the disciples who came in and out of the alchemy room also didn't look at Xiao Hua. So, after a moment, Xiao Hua knew what was going on. He sighed and didn't move. His mind entered the space and began to comprehend the heavenly Tao. In his meridians, the heavenly reflection technique was also operating. Xiao Hua actually began to cultivate. He was really unwilling to let such a good time go to waste. Inside the alchemy room, an old man with white hair and a beard was sitting cross-legged. His face was grim. In front of him was an earth fire with an alchemy furnace above it. Around the furnace, there were 6 disciples sitting cross-legged, holding different things in their hands. Some were gourds, some were fans, some were talismans, and there were also jade boxes and jade bottles. The disciple who led Xiao Hua and was sitting cross-legged behind the old man, holding a jade tray in his hand. Fire. The old man was Zhen Yi. He observed the earth fire with his divine sense and suddenly shouted in a low voice. When the disciple holding the gourd heard this, he hurriedly raised the gourd and formed seals with his hands. From the gourd, several strands of samadhi true fire flew out and rushed into the earth fire. With a whoosh, the earth fire suddenly became smaller and turned into a purple-red color. Zhen Yi formed seals with his hands and struck the alchemy furnace in succession. The alchemy furnace actually emitted a buzzing sound and almost floated up. Sigh. Zhen Yi's expression changed slightly as he exclaimed, "We have the upper hand." The disciple holding the fan was an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. When he heard this, he immediately activated his magic power and raised the fan in his hand to fan the pill furnace. The fan was clearly a magic tool. As he waved it, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was sucked into the fan. Then, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was fanned out by the fan. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was now several times denser than before. When the dense heaven and earth spirit chi was fanned into the earth fire, the purplish-red earth fire flickered a few times and became smaller. The red color was less, and the purple color was more. The pill furnace shook even more violently. Zhen Yi's expression relaxed slightly. He cast a few spells, and the pill furnace floated up from the earth fire. But at this moment, Zhen Yi's expression changed greatly. His tightly shut eyes slightly opened. He formed seals with his left hand and slapped it on his chest. Before Zhen Yi's left hand left his chest, a wisp of purple true samadhi fire was spat out from his mouth and hit the pill furnace. Woo! The earth fire that was burning around the pill furnace suddenly changed again, turning into a purple color. The violently shaking pill furnace gradually stabilized under the purple true samadhi fire and slowly fell down. Zhen Yi's eyes gazed at the true samadhi fire that was mixed with many red flames and sighed again. The cultivator holding the fan in his hand kept the fan. Seeing that the pill furnace had stabilized, he whispered, "Master, you don't have to be too obsessed. How many cultivators in our country of she can refine the true samadhi fire to be as pure as yours? I'm afraid that an overly pure, true samadhi fire doesn't exist in our cultivation world." Zhen Qing, Master naturally knows what you're saying, but without the extremely pure, true samadhi fire, it's impossible to refine this clear flower pill to the highest grade. Master has refined so many clear flower pills, but at most they're high grade. Master is unwilling to accept this. Actually, Master can consider from other aspects. For example, the age of the Shaoyin grass, the weight of the clear stream fruit, etc. Zhen Yi's face was full of displeasure. He waved his hand. How can Master not know these things? He, disciple naturally knows. Master knows, disciple. All right, I know what you're thinking. You've also worked hard. As a foundation establishment cultivator, you still have to accompany Master to refine pills. You should go back. Zhen Yi smiled. This clear flower pill will be refined in another 7 days. There shouldn't be any problems. Master, disciple rarely has the chance to accompany you. Let's stay a little longer. Zhen Qing called over the boy who brought Xiaohua in and had him put away the fan. He then sat behind Zhen Yi. If not for senior brother Zhen Xie's sudden disappearance, disciple wouldn't have the chance to accompany Master to refine pills. However, to have Master refine clear flower pills with gold core stage cultivation is a waste of talent. It can't be said to be a waste of talent. When Master was at Foundation Establishment, I also refined clear flower pills many times, Zhen Yi said with a smile. However, Palace Lord's obstruction has delayed a very important matter of Master's. Palace Lord, there's no other way. If you don't take action, who can accept the task of refining clear flower pills? Zhen Qing smiled apologetically. I don't know where senior brother Zhen Xie went. Every year, he has to refine clear flower pills. Why did he make a mistake this year? Oh, this. Zhen Yi looked at the boys around him and transmitted his voice. According to Palace Lord, 2 months ago, Zhen Xie's life tablet was already broken. It was discovered by the disciple on duty. The palace only sent people to look for clues, but forgot about him refining clear flower pills. Zhen Qing's face was filled with shock. He also transmitted his voice. Where did this happen? How would Master know? Zhen Yi shook his head slightly. Zhen Qing didn't pursue the matter. He looked outside the alchemy room and frowned. What is the disciple outside the alchemy room doing? Humph. A disciple who just entered my Imperial Thunder sect this year is guarding the Eastern Ridge's blazed dawn grass. A disciple from Lightning Hall went to pick blazed dawn grass, but this guy actually neglected his duty and didn't open the array so that the disciple couldn't enter, delaying Master's refining of clear flower pills. He had no choice but to pick blazed dawn grass from other places. The quality of the blazed dawn grass from other places isn't good enough. I'm afraid that the clear flower pills Master will refine this time can only be mid-grade. Zhen Yi swept his divine sense and sneered. This kind of aristocratic family's disciple must be self-centered and never put the interests of the sect in his heart. If I don't teach him a lesson, he'll think that the Imperial Thunder sect is an aristocratic family. This guy must be working hard. He actually has to cultivate after being punished here? Humph, Zhen Yi coldly snorted. Xiao Hua's heart was greatly shaken, as if a large hand had pulled his mind out of the space. Moreover, the true qi in his meridians was also in chaos, wanting to rush everywhere. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. Just as he was about to calm his mind and straighten out his true qi, an enormous pressure came out from the pill room and enveloped his head. As early as 2 years ago, on Jinhua Mountain, the pressure of Fu Yunbua and Xiao Mingwei, 2 Foundation establishment stage cultivators, collided. To him, it was a perilous situation. Today, how could the pressure of a gold core stage cultivator not cause him to tremble in fear? In an instant, the true qi in Xiao Hua's meridians couldn't move, as if it had solidified. His body also felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on him, and large beads of sweat seeped out from his forehead. Gold core stage, cultivator! Xiao Hua powerlessly shouted in his heart. As if to teach Xiao Hua a lesson, the pressure was withdrawn in an instant, and the true qi in Xiao Hua's meridians began to peacefully circulate again. Xiao Hua wiped the sweat from his forehead and bowed respectfully. Many thanks to martial ancestor. Humph, another cold snort, and then no other sound was heard. This time, Xiao Hua didn't dare to cultivate anymore, and only stood respectfully. Another 7 days and 7 nights passed, and only a light scolding sound could be heard from the pill room. A rich medicinal fragrance rushed out from the pill room, and after a moment, the pill room's door opened, and Zhen Yi walked out from the pill room. Xiao Hua hurriedly respectfully saluted and said, "Disciple Xiao Hua greets martial ancestor." Who would have thought that Zhen Yi didn't even look at him, and just walked away? Zhen Qing and the others also took their own things and followed behind Zhen Yi. Xiao Hua looked at everyone's backs and somewhat scratched his head, not knowing whether he should follow or not. "Why aren't you coming over?" A voice entered his ears, and it sounded very unfamiliar. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent, and hurriedly followed behind everyone. The group of people didn't walk too far and arrived at a large hall. Each of the children placed their things in various places in the hall, and then immediately dispersed, leaving only Zhen Yi and Zhen Qing, master and disciple, sitting down. Xiao Hua also learned his lesson and didn't dare to enter the hall, and only quietly waited outside. Inside the hall, Zhen Yi drank a cup of spiritual tea and ate 2 spiritual fruits, then raised his head and looked at Xiao Hua outside the hall. "Master, you've already made this little guy wait for 10 days. Looking at this little guy's appearance, he's able to keep his composure and has some bearing. It's better to call him in and send him away. It didn't take long anyway." Zhen Yi glanced at Zhen Qing. "You're the only one with a soft heart. How many times have I told you that the most important thing in the cultivation world is a soft heart?" "Yes, disciple understands." Zhen Qing smiled apologetically, then raised his head and said, "Disciple outside, come in." When Xiao Hua heard this voice, he hurriedly ran into the hall, looked at the 2, and bowed. "Disciple Xiao Hua greets the 2 seniors." "And whose disciple are you?" Zhen Yi asked very calmly. Reporting to martial ancestor, disciple is a helpless disciple of the myriad Thunder Valley. Xiao Huan naturally knew that this unfathomable cultivator was the Gold Core Realm Zhenyi, and very respectfully replied, "Helpless?" Zhenyi frowned slightly and said curiously, "This brat's eyesight is really not ordinary. That disciple from before made him lose face, and this newly accepted disciple is still so useless." Hearing Zhen Ye's words, Xiao Hua was slightly angered in his heart. It wasn't a big deal for Zhen Yi to say that he was a good-for-nothing. Over the past few years, he had suffered more than that. However, when he heard Zhen Yi bad-mouthing Xiang Yang, Xiao Hua couldn't help but reply, "This disciple made a mistake. It is this disciple's fault. There's no reason for me to implicate senior martial brother and make him a laughingstock." Chapter 1563. Huh? What? Don't tell me I said he was unworthy? Zhenyi never expected Xiao Hua to talk back. He was so angry that he almost laughed. Martial ancestor, this disciple doesn't dare to agree. Xiao Hua stiffened his neck and said, "My 10,000 Thunder Valley was able to produce such a benevolent and filial disciple. Even someone like this disciple who just entered 10,000 Thunder Valley would have a face full of glory. How did I become the person that martial ancestor said would lose face for the sect? Benevolent and filial?" Zhen Yi sneered. "If he wasn't benevolent and filial, I'm afraid he'd already be in the late stage of foundation establishment. At the very least, he'd be in the middle stage of foundation establishment. How would he be like this? He's only in the early stage of foundation establishment, yet he's being ridiculed by others every day. If this isn't losing face, then what is? Others ridiculing me is because they have eyes but fail to see." Xiao Hua retorted sarcastically, "If it wasn't for senior brother, my 10,000 Thunder Valley would have already changed hands. I'm afraid this disciple wouldn't have been able to enter Master's sect. I wouldn't have been able to listen to Master's teachings. Because of this disciple wanted to thank senior brother at that time. I couldn't let senior brother be ridiculed by others. Have eyes but fail to see?" Zhenyi slapped the table and stood up. He released a wave of pressure. This pressure was several times stronger than before. Xiao Hua felt as if he was frozen in a hard rock. He couldn't move at all. However, the fear that came from the bottom of his heart made his whole body tremble nonstop. "Master," Zhenqing said in a low voice, "Xiao Hua is still a child. You don't have any reason to lower yourself to his level." How can this old man lower himself to his level?" Zhenyi snorted and sat back in his chair. He glared at Zhenqing and said, "This old man is angry that the Imperial Thunder Sect recruitment of disciples is getting worse and worse. How can this kind of soft-hearted disciple be accepted? I'm afraid that in the future, Xuanyin School, Shanghua Sect, and Qiqiao Sect will gnaw on him until not even his bones remain." Master, this disciple feels that Xiao Hua's words aren't without reason," Zhenqing said with a smile. "At least, Xiang Yang's heart puts the sect first. He's much better than those traitorous disciples from influential families." I knew you would say that." Zhen Yi snorted again and withdrew his pressure. Xiao Hua immediately felt much more relaxed and didn't dare to say anything else. "Let this old man ask you, which clan's disciple are you?" Zhen Yi looked at Xiao Hua and asked. "Reporting to Grandmaster, this disciple is a loose cultivator." Xiao Hua spoke the truth. "What? A rogue cultivator?" Not only did Zhen Ye's expression change, even Zhen Qing's brows furrowed. It's very rare for a rogue cultivator to reach the 11th level of qi refining. Zhen Yi sneered. Xiao Hua naturally knew what they were talking about. After thinking for a moment, he cupped his hands and said, "Disciple has something to say. If it's inappropriate, I hope Grandmaster can forgive me." "Speak. Just now, Grandmaster said that my eldest senior brother is merciful and doesn't treat raising his cultivation as his top priority. He's purposely throwing away my master's face. But why are we, rogue cultivators, despised by others for raising our cultivation by hook or by crook? Of course, it's important to raise your cultivation, but you can't be unscrupulous. Rogue cultivators don't care about etiquette and rob others. Of course, it's despised by our cultivation sects. Zhen Yi still sneered. Rogue cultivators don't have medicinal pills or cultivation methods. If they don't rely on robbing, what can they rely on to raise their cultivation? Xiaohua said. Besides, since Grandmaster said that we can't be unscrupulous, why is it that when my master wasn't in Myriad Thunder Valley, someone coveted Myriad Thunder Valley? Is it a very good method? Grandmaster didn't say that other people's methods were inappropriate, but why did he say that my senior brother, who was robbed, was a disgrace? This, in an instant, Zhen Yi was really stumped by this question. His face was a little green and red. Haha, Master, this brat is really interesting. You were just joking with him, but he actually said so much. Zhen Qing hurriedly said with a loud laugh. Zhen Yi stared blankly, but soon after, he also laughed loudly. He pointed at Xiaohua and said, You brat, go back and tell this to your helpless master. What are you doing in front of this old man for? When Xiaohua heard this, his heart relaxed greatly. He cupped his hands and said, Disciple saw that Grandmaster is perceptive to the smallest detail, so I said it in front of Grandmaster. If Disciple said it in front of Master, I would have been kicked out long ago. Perceptive to the smallest detail? Zhen Yi's expression changed again. He said, Don't flatter me. If you're in the wrong, just say it yourself. Yes, Disciple doesn't dare quibble. Disciple was indeed in the wrong. Xiaohua's expression also became serious. He took out his storage pouch and said, Disciple picked the blazed dawn grass and brought it here to receive Grandmaster's punishment. Zhen Qing glanced at Zhen Yi, and with a wave of his hand, the storage pouch flew into his hand. Zhen Yi looked at Xiaohua and asked, What punishment did Bright Thunder Hall give you? Disciple is punished with a year's worth of offerings. Xiaohua said honestly. Only a year's worth of offerings. Zhen Yi sneered. How much can a year's worth of offerings be? Disciples of aristocratic families who can enter my Imperial Thunder sect. Speaking up to here, Zhen Yi suddenly remembered that Xiaohua was a loose cultivator. This year's worth of offerings was probably quite a lot for him. Huh, Xiaohua, did you pick this blazed dawn grass yourself? Zhen Qing opened the storage pouch and took out a jade box to look and asked with some surprise. Yes, Disciple personally picked it. Xiaohua's eyes turned slightly as he replied. Master, please take a look. Zhen Qing gave the jade box to Zhen Yi and said, This blazed dawn grass was picked at just the right time. It didn't hurt the roots at all. It's much stronger than the blazed dawn grass that Disciple saw just now. And it's really not bad. Zhen Yi nodded after looking at it. He looked at Xiaohua and said, This little loose cultivator's explanation is much better than the vast majority of disciples of aristocratic families. I'm afraid it's better than many of my Imperial Thunder sect's herb-growing children. What do you mean? Zhen Yi looked at Zhen Qing and asked. Zhen Qing transmitted a few words to Zhen Yi. Zhen Yi frowned and thought for a moment, then slightly nodded. He then said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, you made a mistake this time and delayed the refining of my Thunderclap Palace's Minghua pill. This crime isn't light, since you just entered my Imperial Thunder sect, and this is your first offense. I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Many thanks, Grandmaster. Xiaohua hurriedly bowed and thanked him. Don't thank me. It won't be too late to thank me after I finish speaking. Zhen Yi waved his hand and said, I saw that your method of picking flame dawn grass was very brilliant. You should have experience in cultivating spirit herbs. I wonder if you've stayed in a pill refining room before? Disciple has some experience. Xiaohua nodded. Do you have a fire attribute physique? Yes, Disciple has a fire attribute. Good. Then you'll be a pill refining child in my pill refining room for a year. That's enough. Zhen Yi clapped his hands and said with a smile. This. Xiaohua was slightly stunned. Why aren't you agreeing? Zhen Qing's voice sounded once more. Master has seen your herb-gathering skills, and he appreciates your talent. If you agree and perform well this year, Master might be overjoyed. Even if he doesn't accept you as his disciple, it would still be a blessing for you to learn how to concoct pills. That's right. Just now Master said that if your aptitude is good, After you reach foundation establishment, he can even consider passing on the true samadhi fire technique to you. Hearing this, Xiao Hua understood. To an ordinary disciple, how could this be considered punishment? It was simply a reward, an incomparable reward. However, did Xiao Hua lack these things? It wasn't like he didn't know how to refine medicinal pills or the true samadhi fire technique. What he lacked now was time, an opportunity to cultivate in seclusion. That day, Jade Archive Hall's Jin Liang wanted to delay Xiao Hua's registration, delaying him for a year. Xiao Hua could angrily teach him a lesson. So how could he waste a year in Zhen Ye's pill refining room? Although Zhen Qing wanted to help him with good intentions, but Xiao Hua thought for a moment, then very apologetically smiled at Zhen Qing. He then bowed to Zhen Yi and said, "Many thanks for Grandmaster's good intentions. Disciple is willing to redeem himself. Unfortunately, disciple only knows how to grow spirit herbs and isn't familiar with pill refining. If disciple delays Grandmaster's pill refining, disciple can't bear the responsibility. Grandmaster, please reconsider." Zhen Yi and Zhen Qing's expressions changed slightly. What kind of person was Zhen Qing? He had only seen Xiao Hua protecting Xiang Yang and felt pity in his heart. Although the method of harvesting was good, it was only an excuse. Since Xiao Hua didn't care about this kind of opportunity, how could he say another word? Very good. Zhen Yi sneered. He thought for a moment and said, "This old man originally made an appointment with an old friend to look for something. However, because your blazed dawn grass didn't arrive, the journey was delayed. At this time, they should have already left. This thing is very important to this old man. This old man also waited for many years to get the news. Since this time was delayed because of you, help this old man find another one." As he spoke, he waved his hand and a jade slip flew into Xiao Hua's hand. "This." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. He looked at the jade slip and said, "Disciple, how can disciple look at this thing? Besides, how can disciple find something that Grandmaster cares about? This won't do, that won't do. Do you want to receive punishment or not?" Zhen Yi sneered. "Besides, this old man only asked you to look for information about something, not for you to look for it. You used to be a loose cultivator, so you should have some connections to inquire about it. Moreover, this old man isn't asking you to look for it right now. You only need to find the information within 10 years. 10 years. That long?" Xiao Hua was stunned. 10 years is too short? Then 20 years it is. Zhen Yi said, "If you can't find the information within 20 years, this old man can still deal with you when the time comes." Damn it, I might as well be his pill concoction boy for a year. Xiao Hua secretly complained to his heart. However, since things had already reached this point, how could he still go back? Then, these few years of disciples' foundation establishment realm, do they count? Xiao Hua began to calculate with his fingers. Nonsense, of course they count. Zhen Yi glared at him. He knew what Xiao Hua was thinking and said, "You don't have divine sense right now, so you can ask your eldest senior brother to help you look." He impatiently came to this old man's immortal's cave several times already. "Just ask him to tell you." As he spoke, he waved his hand again and said, "You can go now. Leave the storage pouch here and let your master give you another one. This can also be considered a punishment. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it." Chapter 1564. Xiao Hua had no choice but to bow and leave. Seeing Xiao Hua's figure disappear, Zhen Qing laughed and said, "This myriad Thunder Valley, why does it only recruit such an unreliable disciple? First it was Xiang Yang, then Xiao Hua, and now there's no choice. TSK, what a rotten porridge." Soon after, Zhen Qing said softly, "It's fine if Master didn't punish such an untactful disciple, but why did you give him the jade slip? Let him help Master find it? Even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms. I'm afraid he still doesn't have that ability." Zhen Yi shook his head. "Anyway, the bright flower pill has already been refined." Xiao Hua also hurried over to accept his punishment. In addition, Lightning Thunder Hall has already punished him with a year's worth of daily offerings. Not to mention that I'm a gold core stage grandmaster. Even you, a foundation establishment stage martial uncle, can't really punish him? That's true, but he's a new disciple of Lightning Thunder Palace. He's only been here for 2 months. I'm afraid he hasn't even explored the entire Lightning Thunder Palace. This careless mistake is understandable. Zhen Qing nodded. The reason why he interceded for Xiao Hua before was also based on this. But this bastard has really delayed me for these 10 days. Zhen Yi was somewhat angry. Although I can't tell if the information about that thing is true or false, it's still an opportunity. This old man is so tired that I can't go with him. This old man is unwilling. Master gave him the jade slip. Zhen Qing seemed to understand something. Don't forget, Xiao Hua is a loose cultivator. How many loose cultivators have you seen in the middle of the 11th layer of qi refining? Zhen Yi sneered. In the country of Xi, or in the entire cultivation world, how many loose cultivators above the 11th layer of qi refining are there? Zhen Qing shook his head. Although there are many loose cultivators, most of them have shallow cultivation bases. Even foundation establishment and gold core loose cultivators live in seclusion in spirit veins deep in the mountains and cultivate bitterly. Disciple really hasn't seen many loose cultivators at the 11th layer of qi refining. Moreover, he's a loose cultivator who took spirit herbs to retain his looks. Zhen Yi smiled meaningfully and said, Do you think that if Xiao Hua didn't have some tricks up his sleeves in the state of Xi, and didn't have a source of information, would be able to get enough medicinal pills, spirit herbs, and spirit stones to help him reach the 11th level of qi refining? I understand. Zhen Qing smiled and said, Master gave him the jade slip only to let him find information about that thing. He didn't really let him search for it. With his previous methods as a row cultivator, he might really be able to find it. That's right. Zhen Yi looked outside the cave with a kind smile on his face. However, he had another explanation in his heart. This old man is giving you a way out, but you still don't know how to take it. Then this old man can only reach out and punish him. If I don't make you suffer a little, how can I feel at ease in my heart? Xiao Hua, don't think that it's just a simple piece of news. Moreover, it's a 20-year time limit. If you don't look for him, if you don't give this old man any news within 20 years, even if this old man doesn't find trouble with you, do you think your cultivation won't be affected? This kind of punishment, isn't it much more interesting than punishing you for a year? How could Xiao Hua, who had left Zhen Ye's immortal's cave, know that there was so much karma involved? Seeing his eldest senior brother Xiang Yang's figure waiting not far from the cave, his heart felt warm. When Xiang Yang saw Xiao Hua come out, he didn't dare to go too close. He waved his hand from afar, hinting for Xiao Hua to come over. When Xiao Hua arrived in front of him, Xiang Yang looked up at the cave behind Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, How was it? Martial Uncle Zhen Yi didn't make things difficult for you, right? Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, How could that be? He's an Oris Core stage grandmaster. There's no reason for him to make things difficult for me, right? That's good, that's good. Xiang Yang rubbed his hands and pulled Xiao Hua's hand, saying, Let's hurry back to Myriad Thunder Valley. Master is also worried there. Eldest senior brother, how many days have you been waiting here? Xiao Hua smiled and flew up. I've been waiting for you for a few days. Xiang Yang said with a smile. When I received your message, I immediately notified Master. However, when I arrived at Eastern Ridge, the formation was still sealed, but my message was already gone. Therefore, I went to Thunderflash Hall. Alas, I was also careless. If I had asked clearly earlier, it would have been better. I made you bear the blame for no reason. It's okay, it's okay. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. When I heard Jinfeng's words, I hurried here. However, Martial Uncle Zhen Yi is a senior, and his temper can't be said to be good or bad. Therefore, I didn't dare to rashly ask for an audience. Moreover, I saw that you didn't come out for many days. Presumably, you were waiting inside. The longer you wait, the more martial Uncle Jean Ye's anger will dissipate. That's more beneficial for you. I also didn't expect that you would be able to come out today. Io. Only now did Xiang Yang notice Xiao Hua's cultivation. He was shocked and said, "Little junior brother, you are actually already in the middle of the 11th level of aura refining?" Hee. I'll take advantage of senior brother's auspicious words. Xiao Hua said with a smile. As soon as I entered the Immortals Cave in the Eastern Mountain Range, I had a feeling in my heart and went into seclusion to cultivate. If it wasn't for the fact that I was at a critical juncture, how could I not open the spell formation and delay the Eastern Mountain Range's Medicinal Gardens mission? Haha, Xiang Yang clapped his hands and said, I only thought that little junior brother would be cultivating in seclusion, but I didn't expect little junior brother to progress so quickly. If Master knew, he'd definitely be very happy. As he said this, Xiang Yang was about to send his summoning talisman. Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped him and said, Don't, eldest senior brother. Wait until you see Master. At least there'll be a pleasant surprise. Hee, that's true. Xiang Yang looked at Xiao Hua happily, as if he was looking at a sensible nephew. Xiao Hua originally wanted to let Xiang Yang look at the things in the jade slip, but on second thought, this thing was something that even Zhenyi coveted. It was certainly no small matter, and information about it would definitely be extremely difficult to find out. If Xiang Yang or Zhen you were to find out about this, they would most likely be powerless and anxious. Rather than letting them know, it would be better not to let them know. There was a time limit of 20 years, so it wouldn't be too late to wait until he reached the Foundation Establishment realm. After flying with Xiang Yang for a while, Xiao Hua changed directions and had Xiang Yang accompany him to the Thunder-Shocking Palace. When Jin Feng heard that Zhenyi didn't pursue the matter too much, he was overjoyed. To be honest, this matter was originally his fault. Now that Xiao Hua was fine, his heart could be considered relaxed. As for Xiao Hua's other request, he didn't even think about it before agreeing. Xiao Hua's request was very reasonable, and that was to bring some spiritual plant seeds from the Thunder-Shocking Palace to the Eastern Mountain Range's medicinal garden. He wanted to test which seeds could survive in the Eastern Mountain Range and which seeds couldn't. Not to mention Jin Feng, even Xiang Yang didn't have any doubts. He only thought that Xiao Hua wanted to make up for his mistake by going first. When Xiao Hua came out with a lot of seeds from the Thunder-Shocking Palace, Xiang Yang smiled and said, Little junior brother, your performance was good enough, but wasn't this too much? Apart from the extremely rare spiritual plants, you took a portion of the vast majority of seeds. The spiritual energy of the Eastern Mountain Range is very special. So many seeds can't grow. Who knows? Maybe little brother's character is good? Xiao Hua put away the storage pouch and said, Moreover, there are a lot of seeds in the Thunder-Shocking Palace, so little brother taking a few isn't much at all, right? Xiang Yang only thought that Xiao Hua had a childish character, so he didn't say anything more. He brought Xiao Hua to Zhen Wu's cave in the Myriad Thunder Valley. When they arrived in front of Zhen Wu's cave and landed, the mountain ape scuttled out of the mountain forest. It was holding a bloody goat-like beast in its hand, standing very respectfully by the side of the road. When it saw Xiang Yang deliver the beast in front of him, Xiang Yang waved his hand and pointed to a valley not far away. The mountain ape understood and knew that he should go there to barbecue. However, the mountain ape just didn't leave, bowing its head and cupping its hands. Seeing the beast's blood drip to the ground along with the mountain ape's cupped hands, Xiang Yang helplessly patted his storage pouch and took out a pill and threw it to the mountain ape. The mountain ape happily caught it with its mouth. Then with a long howl, it rushed towards the valley. Seeing the mountain ape's actions, Xiao Hua's heart moved. He had a set of soul-suppressing magic tool for the fire ape in his space. If he said that he didn't want to subdue the fire ape, that would be pure nonsense. Xiao Hua looked at these medicinal pills and other things and said with a bit of confusion, What? Punished? Helplessly's face darkened. It's like this, master. Xiang Yang explained the situation and finally said, These tributes were collected by this disciple on behalf of little junior brother. The tributes for the year of punishment should be counted from this month onwards. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1565. What's going on? Xiao Hua was the hope of myriad Thunder Valley. How could he let Xiao Hua be wronged? Xiao Hua was obviously stunned, but he soon understood that Xiang Yang didn't tell him about his punishment. And he didn't even tell him about the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden. Just as Xiao Hua was about to speak, Xiang Yang rushed to say with an apologetic smile, "Master, it's like this." "Like what?" Xiao Hua glanced at Xiang Yang helplessly. "You brat, you acted on your own again." Yes, I hope Master can understand." Xiang Yang explained the matter, then finally said, "This matter isn't much, so Disciple didn't report it to Master, only saying that little junior brother was cultivating in seclusion." "Damn it," Xiao Hua scolded with a smile. "This brat is indeed cultivating in seclusion. You're right." Seeing Xiao Hua happy, Xiang Yang was also happy. He said, "Grandmaster Zhen, you didn't make things difficult for little junior brother. So isn't this matter over? What's a year's worth? It can't compare to little junior brother stepping into the 11th layer of aura refining in 2 months." "Of course." Xiao Hua looked helplessly at him, then asked, "Grandmaster Zhen, you really didn't make things difficult for you? He's a bit of a vengeful person." "No. How could he make things difficult for Disciple?" Xiao Hua shook his head with a smile. "Disciple just entered the sect. Isn't it normal to make some mistakes occasionally? That's good." Xiao Hua looked helplessly at Zhuoming Wei, then said, "Your master's wife originally wanted to give you a meeting gift. She found medicinal pills with great difficulty from a senior sister in Mythical Thunder Palace, wanting you to use them to break through to the 11th layer of aura refining. But you made your master's wife work for nothing." "Thank you for your concern, master's wife." Xiao Hua's heart warmed, and he stepped forward to bow and thank her. "Child, why are you still being so polite?" Zhuoming Hui waved her hand to help Xiao Hua up, then said, "You're the only child in Myriad Thunder Valley. If we don't think of you, who else can we think of?" Xiao Hua sweated, somewhat embarrassed. No matter what, he was 25 years old, but in their mouths he was actually a child. But when he thought about it, they said he was over 100 years old. If he wasn't a child, then what was he? This vitality assimilation pill was given to 10th layer Qi refining disciples by the Imperial Thunder Sect. "It's not suitable for you now." A hint of awkwardness flashed across Zhuoming Hui's eyes. Then she smiled and said, "After a few days, Mistress will go to Distant Thunder Palace and see if they have any extra energy gathering pills." Absorption pill? Soul gathering pill? Xiao Hua inwardly muttered, "Motherfucker, it's really good to have a sect. I only know about the Peiyuan pill, but who would have thought that they have different pills for each level? Moreover, they even say that there are examples." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "There's no need to trouble yourself. Master's wife, you could just give the absorption pill to Disciple. Don't forget, your Disciple is a rogue cultivator and has never taken this soul gathering pill before. Taking it now will have some effect." "This." Zhuoming Wei turned around helplessly. He waved his hand helplessly and said, "Give it to him. He has more experience in taking medicinal pills than we do. Don't worry about him." Zhuoming Hui clapped her hand and took out 3 jade bottles from her storage bag. She said in a low voice, "Xiao Hua, you haven't taken this medicinal pill before. Don't be in a hurry to take a complete one." First, Zhuoming Hui actually told Xiao Hua the taboo of taking the absorption pill bit by bit. Xiao Hua listened to her long-winded speech, but in his heart, he enjoyed it very much. He smiled slightly and nodded from time to time. In the end, Zhuoming Hui still said apologetically, "In the end, this absorption pill isn't suitable for you. Mistress, you'd better take a look at the energy gathering pill. You're about to reach the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Medicinal pills are indispensable. Alas, unfortunately, Master doesn't know how to refine pills. Xiang Yang and Qing Lian also don't know how to refine pills. Only your mistress knows a little, otherwise." He waved his hand helplessly and said. Xiao Hua's heart moved. He said with a smile, I wonder if Mistress has the pill formulas for the absorption pill or the energy gathering pill. Huh? What, you know how to refine pills? He stared helplessly, then said with pleasant surprise, Master thinks too highly of disciple. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand, then said in a low voice, Disciple feels that. Disciple has been guarding the Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden. There's nothing else but the spiritual plants. Hee, aren't there a lot? Disciple also just received a lot of seeds from the lightning flash hall. Disciple will first plant the pill formulas for the absorption pill and the energy gathering pill. When the time comes, Mistress can take the spiritual plants to exchange for medicinal pills. Wouldn't that be? He helplessly stared blankly at first. Then he looked at Xiao Hua and laughed sinisterly. Only Xiang Yang slightly frowned. Little junior brother, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate, right? What's inappropriate? Helplessly scolded. According to your thinking, if you can't even get a single hair, who will refine pills and make talismans? Damn it, when can Xiao Hua build his foundation? Master, Xiang Yang felt very wronged. Little junior brother just made a mistake. Don't make another mistake. You helplessly jumped up and said angrily, It's you. You can only stay in the early stage of the foundation building realm. Husband. Zhuo Mingwei also stood up with a whoosh and said angrily, That child Xiang Yang is right. What are you shouting for? Helplessly, he glanced at his angry wife. His eyes turned, and his expression immediately changed. He said, Your husband is only teaching Xiang Yang to be more flexible. My voice is just a bit loud. I'm not shouting anything. Master is teaching disciples. Mistress, please take a seat first. Xiang Yang also said quickly. Zhuo Mingwei glared at Xiang Yang and sat back in her chair. Yin Qinglian, on the other hand, had been sitting beside Xiang Yang all along. She lowered her head and didn't say a word. Master, eldest senior brother, you don't need to worry. The Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden only has blazed dawn grass. The other spiritual plants are all barren. No one has ever paid attention to them. Disciple will find a place to plant the spiritual plants first. Hearing this, Zhuo Minghui pondered for a moment, then got up and returned to the back of the cave. After a moment, she came out again. Holding a jade slip, she handed it to Yin Qinglian and said, Qinglian, this is the prescription for several kinds of medicinal pills for aura refining disciples to take. Make a copy of it and give to Xiao Hua. Let him get some spiritual plants. If I go to senior sister empty-handed, I really don't have any face. Disciple obeys. Only now did Yin Qinglian raise her head and respectfully receive the jade slip. All right. Helplessly waving her hand, she pointed to her right and said, Xiao Hua, from now on, you can sit here. Yes. Xiao Hua waited for Yin Qinglian to bring over a chair, then carefully sat down. Helplessly, she looked at Xiao Hua with satisfaction and said, Now that you're already in the 11th layer of aura refining, it's time to start building your foundation. One is the problem of divine sense. If you still haven't developed divine sense by the time you reach the 12th layer of aura refining, you'll have to immediately use our sect's secret technique to stimulate divine sense. The later it is, the less likely you'll be able to build your foundation. Of course, there's no need to stimulate divine sense too early. Although those disciples of influential clans in the 11th layer of aura refining have divine sense, their future prospects are limited. You're a loose cultivator. From what I see, that heavenly laws embodiment technique of yours doesn't involve divine sense. I'm afraid it'll be a bit troublesome. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He was a bit anxious. Of course, he didn't have a Muon palace, so how could he develop divine sense? Should I tell Master? Xiao Hua was a bit hesitant. Just as he was hesitating, he helplessly said, Although our sect's secret technique is different from other sects, in the end, it's all related to the rainbow epiphyllum. I'll give you the secret technique now, so you can familiarize yourself with it in advance. As for the item, when you reach the peak of the 11th layer of aura refining, Master will go to the Thunder Palace to take a look for you. This item should be available in the Qiqiao Pavilion. However, it's hard to say how old it is. Master, the older the rainbow epiphyllum, the better, right? Xiaohua's heart stirred. He put the matter of the Muon Palace aside and asked urgently. Of course, the older the rainbow epiphyllum is, the greater the possibility of developing divine sense. Helplessly and somewhat pensively, he said, it's just that there are a lot of disciples entering our Imperial Thunder sect this time. I'm afraid that the rainbow epiphyllum in the Qiqiao Pavilion won't be enough. We should act first to gain the upper hand. If we can't, then we'll have the disciples go to the major markets to buy them. Our Imperial Thunder sect is such a large sect. How could we not find these things? Zhuo Mingwei smiled and said, if we can't find them, then we can use other spiritual plants. That's true. Helplessly, he rubbed his hands and said, your husband is afraid of delaying Xiaohua's cultivation. I'm a bit worried about personal gains and losses. On the side, Xiaohua also secretly nodded and once again sighed with emotion. AI, it's really good to have the supportive sect. Helplessly, he thought for a moment and said, after the matter of divine sense, it's the problem of cultivation methods. Xiaohua, your master and your eldest senior brother both cultivate the 10,000 June Thunderbolt cultivation method. This cultivation method can withstand the heavenly thunder of the 10,000 Thunder Valley and advance very quickly. It can be considered a medium-level cultivation method of our Thunderous Palace. Zhuo Mingwei asked from aside, that's strange. If you don't let Xiaohua cultivate 10,000 June Thunderbolt, what other cultivation method can he cultivate? He, helplessly, with a mysterious expression, he pointed his finger and said, Xiaohua, show your sect master's command token to your master's wife. Yes, master. Xiaohua was secretly happy in his heart and took out the sect master's command token. It really is the sect master's command token. Zhuo Mingwei suddenly realized and said with a smile, looks like it's the sect master's reward for Xiaohua. Exactly. Helplessly, he said in a low voice, in order to reward Xiaohua for sending the thunder-devouring bead back to the Imperial Thunder sect, the sect master specially issued a sect master's command that Xiaohua can cultivate all the cultivation methods of the 8 great thunder palaces. Zhuo Mingwei and Yin Xinglian were both shocked when they heard this for the first time. What a pity. I don't know when this brat will be able to give me my lightning evasion technique. Helplessly, he sighed. Master, don't worry. Disciple will go to the Heavenly Thunder Palace and get that cultivation method from Master. Xiaohua pretended to get up. Nonsense, quickly sit down. Helplessly, despite knowing Xiaohua's pretense, he still scolded with a smile. It won't be too late to find it when you go to choose your cultivation method. And, since Xiaohua has this good fortune, then this cultivation method must be carefully chosen. Yin Xinglian nodded and said, Sai, that's right. When there was no cultivation method, Xiaohua had to worry about finding one. Now that there is a cultivation method, he has to worry about finding a suitable cultivation method. Therefore, everyone has their own worries, and every family has their own difficulties. This is indeed reasonable. Chapter 1566. Helplessly looking at Xiaohua, he said in a deep voice, My Imperial Thunder sect's cultivation methods are generally divided into 3 grades. The first grade is the high-grade cultivation method, which is cultivated by those with thunder attribute physiques. Not only is the progress very fast, but the power of the cultivation method is also very strong. The second grade is the middle-grade cultivation method, which is prepared for those with fire attribute physiques. The progress should also be okay, but the power of the cultivation method is reduced. I'm afraid it can't compare to the high-grade thunder attribute cultivation method. The third grade is naturally the low-grade cultivation method, which is prepared for disciples with other attribute physiques. The cultivation speed is not fast, and the power is also ordinary. Of course, there are some disciples with rare attribute physiques. Their cultivation methods are also high-grade, but these disciples are extremely rare even in my Imperial Thunder sect, so there's no need to talk about them. Xiao Hua said with a frown. Disciple is of the fire attribute, so I naturally have to cultivate a fire attribute cultivation method. This can only be a middle-grade cultivation method. What else is there to choose? You idiot! If there isn't, why would Master say this? Helplessly scolded. What Master said above is only the general idea. My Imperial Thunder Sect's 8 Great Thunder Palaces cultivation methods are all hidden in the Inheritance Pavilions. And there are also the cultivation methods obtained by the previous masters when they were traveling outside. You, a little loose cultivator, can obtain 3 kinds of cultivation methods. How can my Imperial Thunder Sect cultivation methods be less than yours? Yes, Disciple understands. Xiao Hua understood helplessness's temper. He lowered his head and said, Looks like my Thunderclap Palace has a high-grade fire attribute cultivation method. That's natural, otherwise Master in you. Halfway through speaking, Helplessness realized that he had just said it. He coughed and scolded. You idiot! If our Thunderclap Palace doesn't have it, you could go to the other 7 Great Thunder Palaces. Master wants to tell you, especially the Heavenly Thunder Palace, there are many good things inside. But Disciple can't tell if that cultivation method is good or bad. Xiao Hua somewhat scratched his head. Damn it, Xiang Yang, copy the beginning of the 10,000 Thunderbolts cultivation method for Xiao Hua to see. Now that he knows what a middle-grade cultivation method looks like, is it still hard to find a high-grade cultivation method? Helplessness was somewhat impatient. Master, this isn't good. Xiang Yang anxiously said, My Imperial Thunder Sect has its own rules. Xiao Hua can only receive Master's personal guidance when he reaches the Foundation Establishment stage. Moreover, if this Foundation Establishment cultivation method is seen by little junior brother earlier, I'm afraid it will be detrimental to his cultivation. What kind of bullshit rules are these? Which of those core formation martial uncles didn't casually give pointers to their aura-refining disciples? He mumbled helplessly, Besides, I didn't give him any pointers. I only asked you to show him a cultivation technique. All right, after you read Xiao Hua's cultivation technique, you must not cultivate it. Your cultivation realm is insufficient. If you forcefully cultivate it, you will definitely perish. Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he bowed and said, Disciple understands. Soon after, he helplessly hesitated for a moment before saying, I've already told you about the cultivation method and divine sense. The only one left is the great circle of the aura refining realm. Xiao Hua was an individual cultivator, so his cultivation method was lacking. From the first layer of the aura refining realm to the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, he didn't know how many areas needed to be perfected. Sigh, Master is also worried about you. How about this, Xiao Hua? We don't need the great circle of the aura refining realm. You only need to cultivate to the peak of the aura refining realm and break through to the foundation establishment stage. Then you can take a foundation building pill. We only need the small circle of the aura refining realm. This, Xiao Hua also hesitated. After all, didn't he go to the Fu clan to look for the Qinyan talisman? He wanted to cultivate to the great circle of the aura refining realm. Now that he had the method to refine, the Qinyan talisman, and the cultivation method, if he didn't cultivate to the great circle of the aura refining realm, his heart would be really uncomfortable. Master, you've forgotten. Little junior brother is a loose cultivator. I'm afraid he has never heard of the great circle of the aura refining realm. Xiang Yang helplessly reminded Xiao Hua when he saw him hesitate. Oh right. Xiao Hua helplessly slapped his forehead. Just as he was about to explain, Xiao Hua said, Disciple understands what the great circle of the aura refining realm is. However, Disciple believes that since he can reach the great circle of the aura refining realm, Disciple can't cultivate without reason. If Disciple really can't cultivate, Disciple can just open the Qinyan talisman and directly enter the foundation establishment stage, right? How can it be that simple? Xiao Hua helplessly smiled bitterly. Foundation establishment isn't just about cultivation realm, it's also about fate. If you miss the opportunity to enter the foundation establishment stage, it will be even harder to enter the foundation establishment stage. There's such a thing? Xiaohua was astonished. Isn't that right? Look at your eldest martial brother. He still doesn't know? Xiaohua helplessly looked at Xiangyang and said, Yes, what master said is the truth. Little junior brother, you still have to think twice. Xiangyang nodded. Xiaohua thought for a moment. In his mind, Li Zhongbao's great circle of the aura refining realm appeared. His eyes flashed with a trace of unswerving determination. He smiled and said, Disciple still wants to try. If it really doesn't work, Disciple will open the Qingyun talisman. Xiaohua helplessly turned his head to look at Zhuo Minghui. The latter's eyes were filled with admiration as she slightly nodded. Okay. Xiaohua helplessly sighed and said, In a few days I'll go to Qiqiao Pavilion and help you fight for the Qingyun talisman. Qingyun talisman? Fight for it? Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. Xiangyang smiled and said, The Qingyun talisman and the Qingyun talisman have roughly the same effect. Only the names are different. As for fighting for it, it's because the Qingyun talisman is extremely difficult to refine. If it's not an outstanding disciple in the sect, it won't be given. When the time comes, whether or not little junior brother can get the Qingyun talisman is still uncertain. Afterwards, Xiaohua accompanied Xiaohua and Zhuo Minghui to talk for a while. Then, Xiaohua followed Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian back to their immortal's cave. Xiangyang was very concerned about Xiaohua's cultivation. He asked Xiaohua some details about his cultivation, but what could Xiaohua say? Xiangyang listened for a while and couldn't understand anything. He had no choice but to talk about some of his experiences when he was cultivating his foundation. This experience was the most precious. When Xiaohua was a loose cultivator, he definitely wouldn't have heard about it. Almost every word Xiangyang said hit Xiaohua's heart, causing him to scratch his head in excitement. Naturally, Xiaohua also asked a lot of questions. His questions were also very sharp. Sometimes, it was difficult for Xiangyang to answer. He even called Yin Qinglian, who was in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, to answer. Unknowingly, the two of them talked for an entire night. When dawn broke the next day, Xiaohua reluctantly said goodbye and prepared to return to the eastern ridge. At this time, Yin Qinglian took out 4 booklets and gave them to him. At the top was the refining method of the invisibility talisman. Yin Qinglian said very gratefully, Little junior brother, this invisibility talisman has already been copied into a jade slip. I'm currently comprehending it. Unfortunately, I don't have the blood and fur of a lizard beast, so I'm afraid I can't refine it successfully. However, I still have to thank little junior brother for being able to learn this invisibility talisman. Xiaohua promptly waved his hand. Senior sister has helped little junior brother so much. This invisibility talisman is nothing. When little junior brother gets a lizard beast for senior sister to refine into the invisibility talisman, it won't be too late to thank little junior brother then. Yin Qinglian covered her mouth and said, Then senior sister will wait for little junior brother's lizard beast. The second booklet was, of course, the pill recipes for the soul assimilating pill and soul gathering pill. Zhuo Minghui didn't say that she would copy them completely, while Xiaohua only said that he would look for the spiritual grasses. Logically speaking, Yin Qinglian only needed to copy what kind of spiritual grasses were needed to refine these 2 pills, but she had completely copied down these 2 pill recipes. Xiaohua only needed to open the booklet to know what kind of spiritual grasses were needed to refine these 2 pills. The third booklet, needless to say, was precisely the first mnemonic chant of the foundation building cultivation technique, 10,000 June Thunderbolt, and the method to circulate true qi through the meridians. Although the copy of this cultivation technique wasn't complete, the mnemonic chant and the initial refinement of the meridians and true qi were all clearly explained. Xiangyang's face was also somewhat awkward. He said in a low voice, Little junior brother, the aura refining stage is the process of cultivators drawing spiritual energy into their body and refining it into true qi for their own use. As for the foundation building stage, true qi no longer exists. Instead, it liquefies and forms the so-called true essence. This true essence is the same as ordinary flowing water. No matter whether it's quality or structure, it's not something true qi can compare to. Only by cultivating to the foundation building stage can one truly step into the realm of cultivation. Only then can one truly control magic tools and magic weapons and truly mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Therefore, this foundation building cultivation technique is completely different from the aura refining stage cultivation technique. Little junior brother can only use it as a reference and absolutely cannot practice it. As for the fourth booklet, it was even more beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. It was actually a secret technique of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It was a secret technique to refine the rainbow, epiphyllum, and other objects to stimulate divine sense. However, just as he said, Yin Qinglian had already prepared it. She was truly a good senior sister-in-law. Xiao Hua took the 4 booklets and stored them in his space. He cupped his hands in thanks and said, "Little junior brother understands. If you have any questions, little junior brother will send a sound-transmitting talisman. Good. You should cultivate properly. Elder brother won't disturb you. There's still a year before the next flame dawngrass submission. Just remember it when the time comes." Xiang Yang said with a smile. "Don't, eldest senior brother. If you have something to do, you should go more often. Little junior brother is very lonely there," Xiao Hua hurriedly said. Xiang Yang curled his lips and repeatedly said that he didn't believe him. Yin Xinglian took out 3 jade bottles from her storage pouch and said with a smile, "Little junior brother's monthly allowance is gone. I'm afraid that Master's wife won't be able to find soul-gathering pills for the time being. Senior sister-in-law still has a few soul assimilation pills. They were also taken from junior sister Thunder Palace. You should take them for now." Senior sister-in-law. Xiao Hua was really moved. Since he could remember, only Shang Huaming's 3 senior brothers had given him such care. And that bastard Zhang Qingxiao even coveted his Peiyuan pill. Unfortunately, even if he wanted to give these pills to them now, he couldn't find them. "Take them for now." Xiang Yang waved his hand at this time. "Don't be a little girl. If you know how to cultivate diligently and reach foundation establishment a step earlier and win glory for our myriad Thunder Valley, elder brother and your senior sister-in-law will be satisfied." Xiao Hua took the pills and secretly made up his mind. When he returned to the Eastern Ridge, he would immediately look for earth fire, immediately refine pills, immediately cultivate, immediately, and a lot of things immediately. He must reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. He couldn't disappoint those who cared about him, and he couldn't let those who hurt him be happy. Thinking of foundation establishment, Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed. He thought of 100 Herbs Gate. "Damn it, Jiang Jiantong, just you wait. I'll be back soon. You've seized my Shang Huaming's place, so you must spit out bit by bit," Xiao Hua thought. He cupped his hands and bid farewell to Xiang Yang and Yin Xinglian, then flew to the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden. With the identity token, Xiao Hua no longer had the chance to get lost. According to the map and the token and his own little bright spot, Xiao Hua easily flew to the Eastern Ridge. Chapter 1567. As expected, the Eastern Mountain Range was far away, and the myriad Thunder Valley was even more remote. The two were not in the same direction. Although it was a bit closer than the Thunder Palace, it still made Xiao Hua fly for a long time. Seeing that the area ahead looked very barren and was not a good place to go, Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he thought, "I'm afraid I'm lost again?" Then, Xiao Hua hurriedly took out the identity tablet and opened the map. The direction should be correct. This should be a dangerous place of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua had just thought of this when a deafening roar came from the mountain range to his right. Xiao Hua's body tensed up. That roar seemed to have the effect of confinement. Xiao Hua's flight technique lost its effect, and he immediately fell from the sky. Xiao Hua's heart also jumped, as if it was going to jump out. Damn it! Xiao Hua was shocked. On one hand, he shook his arms try his best to break free from the confinement around his body. On the other hand, he felt helpless and used a method to resist the sound of thunder that he had just taught. That method was indeed useful. Just as Xiao Hua broke free from the confinement around his body, his heartbeat also returned to normal. However, without waiting for Xiao Hua to fly up again, an emotionless divine sense quickly swept over Foundation Establishment Spirit Beast. Xiao Hua was shocked. He didn't even have the time to be shocked. He urged his magic power and immediately used the Earth Escape technique. Like a stone, his whole body quickly fell down and disappeared without a trace. That divine sense followed Xiao Hua to the ground, but it immediately withdrew, as if it had lost interest in Xiao Hua and withdrew like a waterfall. After escaping very far underground, Xiao Hua felt that the divine sense didn't chase after him again. Only then did he shake off the sweat on his forehead and thought in a panic, "Did I make a mistake? Every time I come out, I have to run into something." Last time, it was a fight between two late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators, and I was caught in the crossfire. But fortunately, I was lucky and became a fisherman. This time, I directly ran into a spirit beast. I just flew past a dangerous place. Alas, why is there no safe place in the Imperial Thunder Sect? In the future, I'll have to stay far away from these dangerous places. Xiao Hua escaped from the ground, identified the direction, and fled without a trace. By the time Xiao Hua fully utilized his flight technique and flew back to the Eastern Ridge Her Garden, the sky had already turned completely dark. Even though the night was nothing to cultivators, Xiao Hua still felt somewhat cold in his heart. Only after he opened the array formation and returned to his abode did Xiao Hua feel slightly safer. But immediately after, Xiao Hua stomped his feet. What is this Thunder Flash Hall's deacon doing? Even the array formation token of the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden had been taken away by someone else, and he didn't even know about it. Damn it, I don't know when they'll be able to do it. You're all fine, but you're making me worry here. Sigh, there's nothing I can do. Xiao Hua raised his head and sighed, but soon after, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He put his palms together and muttered in the direction of the myriad Thunder Valley, "Master, this disciple didn't call you elder, and it's not that I'm disrespectful. Who told you to have such a strange name?" Afterwards, Xiao Hua released his perception and looked all around. Seeing that there wasn't anything abnormal, he placed the warning talismans in the abode and sat on a chair in the abode to ponder. This Eastern Ridge's array formation isn't very safe now. I have to think of a way myself. And Evilgen's array formation is pretty good. It can even trap late-stage Foundation Establishment Kimingwei. I have to hurry and see how this array formation is arranged. Xiao Hua was thinking about taking out Evil Zhen's things from the space, but just as his mind entered the space, he remembered that other Foundation Establishment cultivators used Divine Sense. He didn't have Divine Sense and only had Perception, so how could he control it? Moreover, he didn't seem to know the method to control Divine Sense. Moreover, he didn't have any method to control Divine Sense, so how could he? So I had the foresight to ask eldest senior brother to give me a method to control magic tools. Magic tools are controlled by Divine Sense. Even if there isn't a method to control them, it will definitely be involved. With this young master's intelligence, how could I not know how to use it? Thinking, Xiao Hua took out the booklet that Xian Yang gave him. Sure enough, not only did the booklet talk about the expedient method without Divine Sense, it also talked about the method to control magic tools in great detail. Although it didn't specifically teach about Divine Sense, Xiao Hua was still beaming with joy. That's right. Didn't eldest senior brother also give me the method to read jade slips? These two things can be used for reference. These days, Xiao Hua took a lot of things from Xianyang, so he was somewhat confused. And fortunately, this young master has a master now, so I don't have to worry about these things. I have an honest and considerate eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law who have already prepared these incantations. I only need to properly practice them. Soon after, Xiao Hua's heart warmed again. It was as if even a black shadow couldn't be seen as black. Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry to see how to control magic tools. First, he took out the method to use divine sense and carefully studied it. Then, he compared the method to read jade slips with divine sense. Late at night, he returned to his cave and sat cross-legged on a praying mat, cultivating heavenly law's embodiment technique. The next day, Xiao Hua opened his eyes and checked his cultivation. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. In the past few days, he had been refining fire essence flame crystals, so his cultivation increased at a godly speed. Now, he didn't have any suitable medicinal pills to take, nor did he have any fire essence flame crystals to refine. His cultivation increased at a tortoise's speed, returning to the first layer of aura refining at Yellow Flower Ridge. It wasn't that it wasn't increasing, it was just too slow. Xiao Hua still had some Qing E pills in his space, but they were no longer suitable for the 11th layer of aura refining. He did have a lot of foundation establishment pills, but they were reserved for when he reached foundation establishment. Didn't you hear Wu Qi say that? Foundation establishment was just a matter of opportunity. If he didn't grasp it, it would be difficult to step foot in the future. Soon after, Xiao Hua didn't delay. He flew up and first found a pill room in Eastern Ridge. The pill room wasn't too far from the cave. The earth fire inside was sealed with a spell, just like the Fu clan. However, the seal was extremely firm. From the looks of it, it was at least the work of a foundation establishment cultivator. Xiao Hua was helpless. He spent a tremendous amount of effort to use the tip of the devil's spear to loosen the seal. However, from the looks of it, there was still some distance before the seal was broken. And, fortunately, the seal didn't automatically recover under the burning of the earth fire. Otherwise, Xiao Hua would have vomited blood. Soon after, Xiao Hua found a slightly suitable place and released the puppet. It flattened the mountainous area, tidied up the medicinal garden, and took the seeds of the spiritual herbs. At the very least, he had to do something to save face. For more than 10 days, Xiao Hua didn't do anything else but tidied up these things. However, it could be considered as a harvest. The earth fire seal was finally broken through after his painstaking efforts. The spiritual herbs were also planted in his space. Of course, they were planted earlier than these. As for the method of using divine sense, Xiao Hua was even more delighted. His perception was actually the same as divine sense and could be controlled by him. Needless to say, he could already read the jade slips. It was even possible to write things in the jade slips. Moreover, he also thoroughly understood the method of refining magic tools. The only thing left was to refine the magic tools in the space. Of course, his current focus wasn't on magic tools. He first put these aside and looked through Zhen Xie's things. Zhen Xie was a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. There were many things in his storage pouch. Aside from the spiritual herbs that couldn't compare to Xiao Hua's, he had more spirit stones and medicinal pills than Xiao Hua. Moreover, Zhen Xie's storage pouch also had many jade slips and a small number of magic tools. As for the yellow talismans and other commonly used items, needless to say, there were even a few rare spiritual talismans. However, Xiao Hua completely ignored all of this. He only took out those jade slips and looked through them one by one. The jade slips contained incomplete cultivation methods, pill recipes, talisman crafting methods, spell techniques commonly used by foundation establishment cultivators, and so on. There were also many that Xiao Hua didn't understand. These were all thrown to the side by him. It wasn't until he picked up a jade slip that Xiao Hua's furrowed brows relaxed. This jade slip recorded the arrangement and control method of the heavenly fire array. Of course, the jade slip didn't only record the heavenly fire array. There were also some basic formation principles and other formations. However, Xiao Hua didn't want to study it in detail at this time. He put the other jade slips that he had seen and hadn't seen into the space. Only then did he carefully look at the heavenly fire array. The great fire array looked very difficult to understand. After looking at it for several days, Xiao Hua suddenly realized that the great fire array was essentially the same as the warning amulet. The difference was that the warning amulet had different runes written on the child amulet in advance, and then used the parent amulet to control it. The Great Fire Array was composed of array discs and array flags. The runes were written on the array discs and array flags in advance. The array discs were the child amulets, which were arranged in secret places. The array flags were the parent amulets, which were used to activate and control the array. Understanding this, Xiaohua still felt somewhat confused. It seems the array shouldn't be like this, right? But what is this array? He couldn't remember. All right, this young master will first understand this heavenly fire array and protect myself. Xiaohua abandoned the idea of getting to the bottom of things and specifically pondered on how to arrange the heavenly fire array. In the blink of an eye, several dozen days passed, and Xiaohua barely understood this array. Soon after, Xiaohua left the cave and walked to a suitable location. With a wave of his hand, he took out a shiny formation plate. He closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. His hand formed a seal, and along with the movement of Xiaohua's fingers, the surrounding slightly violent fire attribute, spiritual energy, was sucked into the seal. When the seal was formed, Xiaohua's face was deathly pale. His hand felt as if it was holding a heavy object, and every wave was extremely difficult. In the end, Xiaohua finished forming the hand seals. He clenched his teeth and urged the remaining magic power in his body. He flung his hand and hit the formation plate. The formation plate ignited with a tongue sound. It was like an orange-red flame that was extremely enchanting as it floated in the air. Moreover, along with the dancing of the flame, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was also attracted, and the flame became increasingly bigger. Chapter 1568. Xiaohua squinted his eyes. He took out a few Qingyi pills and threw them into his mouth. He operated Heavenly Law's embodiment technique to refine the medicinal power and recover his magic power. When his magic power recovered a bit, Xiaohua urged his magic power again. He pointed at the orange flame and shouted, "Quick!" Suddenly, the flame seemed to have gained sentience as it landed on the ground and disappeared. Once the flames disappeared, Xiaohua also sat on the ground. He gasped for breath and said, "Damn it, this magic formation really isn't something an aura refining cultivator like me can make. I just finished making a magic plate, and my magic power is already not enough. Wouldn't it take me several days to finish setting up the entire heavenly fire formation? Hee. But in this formation that can kill a foundation establishment late-stage cultivator, won't I be at ease?" As a result, Xiaohua set up a formation plate every day. Then, the magic power in his body would be exhausted. Then, he would close his eyes and cultivate to recover his magic power. The next day, he would set up another formation plate. After several days, the entire heavenly fire formation was completely set up. Because the location of the earth fire was not very far from the cave, Xiaohua considered safety and placed an abandoned alchemy room in the formation. After he finished setting it up, Xiaohua was once again exhausted and had no magic power left. He could only clap his hands foolishly and say to himself, "This is a formation. I'm really a genius." However, when Xiaohua recovered his magic power, he was stunned when he used his magic power to urge the formation flag. The entire heavenly fire formation couldn't be activated. Needless to say, there was definitely a problem with Xiaohua's arrangement. In the following 10 days, Xiaohua compared the jade slip and carefully thought about his method. He constantly improved it. Finally, on a night when dusk was rising, he finished setting up the entire heavenly fire formation. The instant he finished setting it up, Xiaohua sensed that the fire-attributed spiritual energy of heaven and earth around a heavenly fire formation was suddenly sucked into the formation plate. It overflowed like flowing water in the formation plate. When it reached a certain equilibrium, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gradually disappeared. The formation plate's previous abnormality also disappeared. Wonderful! Xiaohua clapped his hands. This was exactly the same as Zhen Xie's arrangement. However, right when Xiaohua circulated his magic energy and activated the formation with a wave of the flag according to the jade slip, the extremely enormous suction force on the flag had absorbed all of Xiaohua's magic energy in a short moment, and not a single drop remained. Fortunately, Xiaohua's magic power was just enough for him to wave the spell flag once. Looking at the orange flame that appeared in the place he wanted to see with the wave of the spell flag in his hand, Xiaohua's battered heart was revived. However, after resting for a while, Xiaohua once again had some doubts. He knew that his magic power was different from ordinary cultivators. It was much more vigorous. Although he was currently in the middle stage of the 11th layer of the aura refining realm, Xiaohua believed that his magic power was absolutely comparable to the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Thinking about all the pills he had taken and the fire essence flame crystals he had refined, Xiaohua would naturally think so. In fact, he even believed that his magic power was not much weaker than an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. After all, these days, Xiaohua often dealt with early-stage foundation establishment cultivators, especially Xiangyang. In Xiaohua's eyes, Xiangyang's magic power, to be honest, was really, since that was the case, then there was no reason for Xiaohua to wave the formation flag only once. Even if this formation flag was used by a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, the disparity couldn't be that great. Thinking about how Zhen Xie had easily waved the formation flag that day and freely controlled the formation, Xiaohua's heart was filled with doubts. Could it be that there are still many secrets in this formation that I can't figure out? Xiaohua was very puzzled. He flipped through the jade slip again, but where were these records? Forget it, let's talk about it later. Xiaohua put down his doubts. Next, Xiaohua didn't stop. He first took the vitality absorption pill and tempered it. Sure enough, this vitality absorption pill was worthy of being a medicinal pill designated by the Imperial Thunder Sect. Its effect was not comparable to low-level medicinal pills, like the Clear Breeze pill. Xiaohua felt that his cultivation had improved again. Since he knew that this vitality absorption pill was useful, then the so-called vitality gathering pill must also be effective. Thus, Xiaohua went to the pill room and took out the three-legged vermilion bird phoenix pattern furnace. While warming up the pill furnace, he took out the pill recipe that Yin Qinglian had copied and examined it. After he finished reading, his brows slightly wrinkled. With a wave of his hand, he took out another jade slip. This jade slip turned out to be Zhen Xie's. It also contained pill recipes and alchemy techniques. Zhen Xie was originally an alchemist who refined the clear flower pill, so he naturally had these things on him. Xiaohua didn't look at it carefully. After all, what was recorded in this jade slip were basically medicinal pills used by foundation establishment cultivators. There were only a few records of medicinal pills used by high-level qi refinement cultivators like the vitality absorption pill and the vitality congregation pill. Only after seeing that the things inside were the same as what was recorded did Xiaohua put away the jade slip and booklet. He frowned and pondered. The method of refining the vitality absorption pill is different from a method of refining the clear pleasure pill. There are many areas where the difference is very large. My methods are suitable for refining the clear pleasure pill, but I don't know if they can be used when refining the vitality absorption pill. This vitality absorption pill's main ingredient also contains the vitality absorption fruit. I'm afraid it's about the same as refining the Peiyuan pill. Of course, the about the same in Xiaohua's heart was referring to his own refining techniques. He had a lot of spiritual herbs in his space, and the main ingredients and supplementary ingredients for refining the vitality absorption pill were all present. Once the pill furnace was ready, Xiaohua began to refine the vitality absorption pill. The refining room for the vitality absorption pill was naturally complicated. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the Clear Breeze pill. However, with Xiaohua's experience of refining pills in the Fu Clan's pill refining room, he gradually fumbled around. After more than 10 days of hard work, he finally succeeded in refining 4 medicinal pills in a furnace. After casting the cultivation technique into the pill furnace, Xiao Hua took out the vitality absorption pill given to him by Zhuo Minghui and put it into his mouth. He then operated his cultivation technique to refine the medicinal efficacy. Soon after, he took out the vitality absorption pill given to him by Yin Qinglian and similarly refined it in his meridians. He then opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Sure enough, the vitality absorption pills given to master and senior sister-in-law are the same. I'm afraid this medicinal pill is the same as the clear flower pill. Every year, there's a fixed alchemist who refines it and then distributes it to the aura-refining disciples as a regular offering." Thinking up to this point, Xiao Hua slapped his head and took out a jade bottle from his space. He thought to himself, "This is young master's first month's regular offering at the Imperial Thunder Sect. If it wasn't for eldest senior martial brother helping me receive it, I'm afraid I would have been punished and confiscated. Right? This is also a vitality absorption pill." Xiao Hua took out the medicinal pill from the jade bottle and took a look. Soon after, he also took it. After a long while, the medicinal efficacy of the vitality absorption pill was refined by him. Xiao Hua opened his eyes and sneered. "The medicinal efficacy of this vitality absorption pill is inferior to the previous two. I'm afraid it was refined by 2 different alchemists. Moreover, looking at how the medicinal efficacy is so far apart, not only is there a difference in the level of alchemy between the 2 alchemists, there's also a difference in their cultivation, right?" Soon after, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the jade bottle on the ground flew into his hand. He said with a smile, "I wonder how much of a difference there is between young master's level and that of the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists?" However, after waiting for a moment, before Xiao Hua had time to refine the medicinal efficacy, his face revealed a trace of amazement, as well as a trace of pleasant surprise. And it was a face full of pride. Damn it, could it be that young master is an alchemist? After refining the medicinal efficacy of the vitality absorption pill, Xiao Hua opened his eyes and immediately somersaulted several times in the air. How can the vitality absorption pill refined by myself be compared to the one refined by the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists by several times? How can the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists endure this? Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua laughed heartily. However, just as this laughter resounded through the pill refining room, it came to an abrupt stop. Xiao Hua stared blankly on the spot. Soon after, Xiao Hua's face revealed an expression of sudden realization. He jumped up from the ground and said loudly, I understand. Why is it that Foundation establishment cultivators can easily set up formations, but I have to use so much effort to set them up? It turns out that it's just as eldest senior brother said. Foundation establishment cultivators have a lot of true qi in their meridians, but it's true essence. True essence is liquid true qi. No matter whether it's quality or quantity, it's not on the same level as true qi. And how can the magic power produced by true essence compare to the magic power produced by true qi? They're simply not on the same level. Moreover, I also understand what Master said before on Yellow Flower Ridge. Without a realm, even if one's magic power continuously increases, what's the use? The magic power casually used by a Foundation establishment cultivator is more than the magic power of a qi refining cultivator. Moreover, Xiao Hua laughed out loud. Moreover, how would I know what it is? I'm afraid that only when this young master enters Foundation establishment will I know the specific difference, right? Damn it, this young master must enter Foundation establishment. Xiao Hua thought. He reached out and took out the vigorous Thunderbolt cultivation technique. Although Xiang Yang repeatedly warned him not to read it too early, Xiao Hua really couldn't help it. Of course, this Foundation establishment cultivation technique was different from qi refining cultivation technique. The mnemonic chant was quite obscure, and Xiao Hua didn't understand many parts of it. Fortunately, Xiao Hua wasn't really cultivating right now. He just wanted to see how this cultivation technique was like in the end. He wanted to have a foundation in his heart so that he could go to the 8 Great Lightning Palaces technique inheritance pavilion in the future to look for even higher level cultivation techniques. Although Vigorous Thunderbolt was different from Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, they both used meridians to temper the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Inside, there were naturally descriptions of meridians. However, after more than 10 days of reading and thinking, Xiaohua had some doubts. The meridians of this foundation establishment cultivation technique actually weren't connected to the meridians of the Qi refining realm. This was naturally a very strange matter, because among the Qi refining cultivation techniques that Xiaohua had come into contact with, regardless of whether it was Death Flower Underworld, Raising Fire to the Heavens, or Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, the end of each layer of the cultivation technique was connected to the beginning of the next layer of the cultivation technique. In Xiaohua's understanding, a higher layer of cultivation technique was to break through the barriers between different meridians and use a new tempering method to temper even more spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the new meridians. Foundation establishment cultivation techniques were naturally to break through the barriers of new meridians after reaching the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm, and then cultivate in the new meridians. Chapter 1569. Strange. Xiaohua scratched his head and thought to himself, if the 12th layer of Qi refining is said to have completely refined the meridians, then the meridians in Heavenly Law embodiment technique clearly haven't reached the end. It seems that there are still many more meridians in dragonization art. Why does Vigorous Thunderbolt require one to reopen different meridians in the lower Dantian to cultivate? This was Xiaohua. He was cultivating the dragonization art at the same time as cultivating a normal technique. Previously, he could sense the various meridians in the 11th layer of Qi refining. Moreover, he also knew that there were many interconnected meridians around these meridians. If it was someone else, how could they know? Could it be this Heavenly Law embodiment technique isn't a complete set of Qi refining techniques? Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of this. However, he immediately denied it. He had already read this technique from beginning to end. If it wasn't a complete technique, he would have already said it out loud. In other words, the possibility that Xiaohua thought of didn't exist. Could it be, behind this Heavenly Law embodiment technique, there are still unrecorded techniques? Xiaohua suddenly quivered. An even more outrageous thought appeared in his mind. Only this thought could explain Xiaohua's perception of those meridians when cultivating the dragonization art. What's wrong with me? Is it the heart devil of the 11th layer of Qi refining? After Xiaohua's excitement, he immediately calmed down. Qi refining techniques had been cultivated for who knows how many years in the Xiaoyu continent. Who knows how many heavenly geniuses there were, and who knows how many people had extraordinary encounters. Everyone directly entered foundation establishment after reaching the 12th layer of Qi refining. There had never been a person who cultivated to the 13th layer after reaching the 12th layer of Qi refining. Maybe I'm ignorant and inexperienced. I've never heard of it. Maybe those people were all geniuses who achieved great magical powers, but there are no records of them in the ancient records. Thinking of this, Xiaohua put these things down. Right now, he was still some distance away from the peak of the 11th layer of Qi refining. There was no need to delve into it now. When he returned to Myriad Thunder Valley in the future, he would ask Xiangyang or Helplessness. If not, he would go to Thunder Palace's Technique Imparting Pavilion to investigate. In the following 10 months, Xiaohua wholeheartedly focused on refining pills, taking pills, and increasing his cultivation. While refining pills, he also began to practice the Thunder Light Evasion technique and the driving techniques of magic tools. It was precisely as Xiaohua had expected earlier. This Thunderlight Flight technique was extremely profound, and it wasn't something common flying techniques could compare to. The first step to cultivating the Thunderlight Flight technique required one to possess a lightning attribute physique. Only with this physique would one be able to sense the lightning attribute spirit energy within the spirit energy of heaven and earth. And only then would one be able to borrow the flexibility and strength of the lightning attribute spirit energy to cultivate the flight technique. Fortunately, Xiaohua had already practiced fire escape and earth escape. Although this lightning escape technique wasn't a pure 5 elements escape technique, it was still within the 5 elements. Therefore, Xiaohua had some difficulties practicing it, but he still gradually learned it. Among them, what Xiaohua didn't understand the most was that he was actually able to sense the lightning attribute spiritual qi that troubled cultivators of other attributes. This was the most crucial step. As long as he took this step, his future path would be smooth and level. While Xiaohua was practicing the lightning evasion technique in the Eastern Ridge, he was still thinking, could it be because of the thunder devouring bead? There are flashes of lightning in my space from time to time. Maybe it has something to do with this? As for whether it was true or not, what did it matter? Xiaohua was already gradually getting familiar with the first level of the Thunderlight Flight technique. Furthermore, although the common method of refining magic tools was convenient, it also had its disadvantages. Different cultivation levels could refine different magic tools. With Xiaohua's cultivation level, he couldn't refine high-level magic tools. Not to mention the magic tools used by late Foundation establishment stage cultivators in Xiaohua's space. Even the Shadow Moon Xiaohua that Ling Jingyi gave him couldn't be refined. Xiaohua used 10 months of effort to refine the triangular magic tool of Spirit Husbandry Sect and the palm-sized ring of Yin Yanwei. The magic tool of Spirit Husbandry Sect was an offensive and defensive magic tool. It could use the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to attack, and it could also form a protective barrier around the user. The most special thing was that it could change the outer appearance of the cultivator and conceal the ripples of the cultivator's magic power, achieving the goal of concealment. Xiaohua didn't know the name of this magic tool. Since it was his, he naturally had to give his own name. Xiaohua scratched his head and thought for a long time before naming it Ikichan. As for the palm-sized ring, it didn't have any offensive or defensive abilities. The only thing it could do was to see through the 5 elements. Yin Yanwei relied on this thing to see through the restriction set up by Blood Shadow and Xiaohua's figure underground. Xiaohua named it Observe. Naturally, Xiaohua had also thought of using these magic tools to activate the Black Iron Needle. However, after looking at the sacrificial refining method and then looking at the trick behind the Black Iron Needle, Xiaohua still decided to use the sacrificial refining method. In Xiaohua's space, there was a set of 2 soul-absorbing bells. Xiaohua felt that they were similar to the small hook's soul tool and wanted to refine them. Unfortunately, the common refining method in Xiaohua's hand wasn't effective. He probably needed the refining method specifically used by Xiaonan's Cheng family, seeing that he had cultivated all the techniques he could in the past year, and that his heavenly reflection technique had just reached the peak of the 11th level of the Qi refinement realm. Xiaohua couldn't help but be overjoyed. It wasn't just his cultivation that was effective. Xiaohua's refining of medicinal pills was also very smooth. Now, he could already produce 24 soul-absorbing pills in 1 furnace, which was barely enough for Xiaohua's nighttime cultivation speed. During the day, Xiaohua could only refine medicinal pills while practicing lightning escape and familiarizing himself with the magic tools. In addition, Little Huang and Little Silver in the space had also changed a lot. Let's talk about Little Huang first. A year ago, after swallowing Qin Mingwei's primordial spirit, it had fallen into a deep sleep. While sleeping, Xiaohua could clearly sense that Little Huang's injuries had healed. Half a year ago, Little Huang had woken up. Although it hadn't fully recovered, it looked a lot more spirited and could already slowly fly around in space. As for Little Silver, he had rendered meritorious service in saving Xiaohua's life last time. Even his sharp teeth had been grinded until they bled. So how could Xiaohua not be grateful? When Little Dusk slept, Little Silver only moved within a range of several zhang and never took half a step out of the minefield. However, Little Silver's nose kept sniffing the spirit herbs. It was just that without Little Huang's permission, Little Silver didn't dare steal any. It wasn't until Little Huang woke up and told Xiao Hua about this that Xiao Hua found out that Little Silver could eat spirit herbs. Wasn't that simple? Xiao Hua might not be willing to part with spirit stones, but he had as many spirit herbs as he wanted in the space. Xiao Hua took out a piece of the extremely vast medicinal field in the space. There were some ordinary spirit herbs inside, just that they had been growing for a long time. He had Little Silver look for food in this medicinal field. Little Silver was very happy. It scurried around the entire herb field and rolled around casually, eating until its little belly was round and full. Little Yellow was also very happy to see this. AI, it's so good to be able to cultivate in peace. Xiao Hua looked around the space from time to time and sighed with emotion. This scene was something he hadn't dared imagine when he was an itinerant cultivator. All right, I've now reached the peak of the 11th level of Qi refinement. It's time for me to make a trip back to Myriad Thunder Valley. Admittedly, there's a rainbow epiphyllum in my space, but Shifu needs to go to Shuttling Thunder Hall to ask for another one. It'll be a waste if I don't take it. Xiao Hua thought to himself. Also, it's time to ask Shifu about the cultivation technique. Let's see if I can go to Martial Arts Pavilion to find it now. Just as Xiao Hua was about to pack up and leave, he thought again. Good, I almost forgot. It's almost a year's time, and that senior brother Zhiming who came to Eastern Ridge to pick inflammation dawngrass is coming again. If I run off now, won't he have to return empty-handed again? Thus, after Xiao Hua picked enough inflammation dawngrass in advance, he calmly stayed in Eastern Ridge to refine pills and wait for Zhiming's arrival. Almost a month's time passed. Sure enough, the command medallion in the space vibrated again. When Xiao Hua slightly released the restriction on the formation, a crimson-red messaging talisman flew in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. He's finally here, Xiao Hua crushed the messaging talisman and flew into the air. He opened the formation and saw a thin and tall young cultivator with a trace of impatience on his face. He was precisely waiting in midair outside the formation. Xiao Hua carefully sized him up. This cultivator looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. He had long and narrow cheeks, extremely small eyes, a pair of extremely light eyebrows, and a few black spots on his deathly pale face. When the cultivator saw Xiao Hua come out to greet him, he didn't even salute. He very rudely called out, "Are you Xiao Hua?" Xiao Hua smiled and bowed. This disciple is indeed Xiao Hua. Is senior brother Zhiming? Naturally, it's I. Zhiming wasn't surprised. He sneered and said, "If it wasn't for I's bad luck, who would come to this Eastern Ridge medicinal garden?" Xiao Hua smiled apologetically and said, "This disciple was negligent last year and let senior brother Zhiming accompany me to receive punishment. This disciple's heart truly feels apologetic. Don't say those useless things." Zhiming unexpectedly didn't want to talk to him. "Where's this year's flame dawngrass? Don't tell me you still wanted to personally go harvest it?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This naturally isn't necessary." As he spoke, he took out his storage pouch and handed it over. He said, "This disciple has already harvested this flame dawn grass long ago. Senior brother, please take a look." And Zhiming slightly nodded. He took the pouch and opened it to take a look. He was somewhat astonished. Your harvesting technique is quite brilliant," Xiao Hua replied. "This disciple is only of this little use. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so eagerly." "Good." Zhiming only said one word. He took back the storage pouch and nodded. He said, "This year's matter is already done. You should properly take care of the medicinal garden." As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something. He slapped his forehead and said, "That's right. Did you take a lot of seed from the Thunderflash Hall last year?" Xiao Hua replied, "Yes. Does senior brother need something?" "Naturally, I need to inspect it." Zhiming pointed with his finger and said, "Open the formation. I want to see where you've planted these spirit grasses." Xiao Hua obeyed and opened the formation. He led Zhiming to the place where he planted the spirit grasses. Chapter 1570. Looking at the flat herb garden and some small sprouts, Zhiming nodded slightly, then lectured, "How can you grow other spirit herbs in this kind of place? I don't know what you're thinking. Disciple has nothing to do, so I want to see if I could grow other spirit herbs. If I can, that would be great, but if I can't, I'll just waste some seeds. As you wish." Zhenming waved his hand and was about to fly away when Xiaohua stopped him. He patted his storage pouch and took out a few jade bottles and some spirit stones, then handed them over. He said very sincerely, "This is Disciple's 2 months' worth of provisions last year. Because of Disciple, senior brother Zhenming was punished with a year's worth of provisions. Disciple knows that these provisions can't compare to senior brothers, but they are Disciple's good intentions, so please accept them." Zhenming obviously didn't expect Xiaohua to give him pills and spirit stones. He thought for a moment, then waved his hand and the items fell into his hand. His pale face showed a trace of smile and said, "Since you have such thoughts, I won't be disrespectful." Seeing Zhenming accept the pills, Xiaohua's heart could be considered to have been put down. He smiled and said, "Farewell, senior brother Zhenming." Good. We'll meet again next year," Zhenming said as he flew into the air. However, after flying for a few dozen feet, he turned back and reminded, "Oh right, Xiaohua, I still haven't found the spare token for the Eastern Ridge Formation. Your formation isn't very safe, so you have to be careful." "Thank you for the reminder, senior brother." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Aside from flame dawngrass, there's only flame dawngrass here. It's far inferior to other herb gardens. So who would come here? Besides, Disciple is only a chi refining disciple, and my cultivation is shallow. Others won't put me in their eyes. It's always better to be careful. Unfortunately, this spell formation is only for defensive purposes. It doesn't have any offensive capabilities. Otherwise, I forgot that there are 2 command medallions." Smiling wryly, Zhenming clasped hands and flew out of the Eastern Ridge, heading back to the Lightning Flash Temple. Seeing that Zhenming had left, Xiaohua smiled and said, "This year's mission is over. I don't have anything to do for the next year. Looks like I have to make a trip to the Myriad Thunder Valley." After that, Xiaohua tidied up a little, opened the formation, and used the lightning escape technique that he had just learned, and flew in the direction of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. The lightning evasion technique was indeed formidable. It was more than half as fast as Xiaohua's flight technique. However, this lightning evasion technique consumed a lot of magic power. After flying for a while, Xiaohua switched back to his original flight technique. Along the way, Xiaohua was careful. He looked at the map while flying. As long as there were dangerous and forbidden areas, he would stay far away from them, so he didn't encounter any danger. On the contrary, along the way, they encountered a lot of aura refining and foundation building disciples. There was even a grandmaster in the Gold Core realm. Xiaohua respectfully stopped for these seniors with profound cultivation bases and politely let them go first. He received quite a lot of smiles. Seeing his master's immortal's cave, Xiaohua landed. That mountain ape immediately pounced out from the mountain forest. It stretched out its arms and revealed a pair of sharp claws to grab Xiaohua. Xiaohua frowned. He waved his hand and cast a confinement technique. The mountain ape was bound almost without any resistance. It fell to the ground in an instant and let out a roar. Immediately, 2 divine senses came from the helpless immortal's cave and Xiang Yang's immortal's cave respectively. They scanned Xiaohua's body. Of these 2 divine senses, Xiaohua was very familiar with one of them. It was eldest senior brother Xiang Yang. He didn't encounter the other one. Since it wasn't helpless, then it should be Zhuo Minghui's. Sure enough, not long after the 2 divine senses were retracted, Xiang Yang flew over with a smile on his face. Seeing that Xiaohua's cultivation base was already at the peak of the 11th layer of aura refining, he was very happy and said, "Little junior brother is indeed a genius. I haven't seen you for just a year, and you've made great progress. I can see that you're already a cultivator at the 12th layer of aura refining. Xiao Hua wryly smiled. Eldest senior brother, I'm suffering in the Eastern Ridge herb garden by myself. You didn't even come to see me. Otherwise, I might have already reached foundation establishment by now. What? Xiang Yang was surprised at first. Then he laughed out loud and said, You little brat, I was afraid of delaying your cultivation, so I didn't dare to go. What's so hard about you? After you reach foundation establishment, I'll ask my wife-in-law to help you find a suitable dual cultivation partner in the Thunder Palace. At that time, let's see if you'll still complain or not. Hearing this, Xiao Hua quickly waved his hand and said, Forget it, eldest senior brother. Let me go find one myself. Who knows what kind of person my wife will find? Oh, little junior brother, you don't trust your wife's eyes? Yin Qinglian also flew over. No, Xiao Hua quickly said, I'm just joking with you, eldest senior brother. Hee, little junior brother, your eldest senior brother is right. If you're interested, I should help you find a dual cultivation partner in the mythical Thunder Palace. It can't be. Xiao Hua was stunned and waved his hand even more hurriedly. Don't, senior sister. You two don't need to worry about this. Could it be that little junior brother already has a sweetheart? Yin Qinglian said with a smile. Eldest senior brother, where's master? This little brother has some questions about cultivation. Xiao Hua hurriedly turned his head and asked. Hearing Xiao Hua mention cultivation, Xiang Yang also quickly replied, Master isn't in the cave today. You should be on duty in the Myriad Thunder Valley. If you have something urgent, I'll send you a summoning talisman. No need. My matter isn't urgent. When will Master come back? He should be back by tomorrow, Xiang Yang said with a smile. Master has been thinking about you for half a year. He said you used 2 months to cultivate from the 10th layer to the middle of the 11th layer. He hasn't seen you for half a year, so you must have cultivated to the 12th layer. Maybe I'll even cultivate to foundation establishment and give him a surprise. A voice came from the cave. It was Zhuo Minghui who walked out. Disciple greets mistress. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly stepped forward and bowed. Get up, good child. Zhuo Minghui waved her hand and helped Xiao Hua up. She looked him up and down and said with a smile, Although you haven't stepped in a foundation establishment, cultivating to the peak of the 11th layer in a year is still commendable. Thank you for your praise, mistress, Xiao Hua said embarrassedly. Not being able to cultivate to the 12th layer might have disappointed master. Let's go, Xiao Hua. Let's talk inside the cave, Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Cultivation isn't something that can be done in a day. If the 10th layer can be cultivated to completion in 2 months, the 11th layer might take 2 years. Don't think too much. The 4 of them entered the cave and sat down. As usual, Yin Qinglian took out spiritual tea and spiritual fruits. After Xiao Hua ate some, Zhuo Minghui asked, Xiao Hua, your medicinal garden in the Eastern Ridge. However, she only said half of what she wanted to say and didn't say anything else. Disciple understands, Xiao Hua said with a smile. He clapped his hands and took out a storage pouch, handing it to Zhuo Minghui. This is disciple's gift to mistress. Mistress, please help me. And okay. Zhuo Minghui liked Xiao Hua's cleverness very much. She opened the storage pouch and looked at the spiritual herbs used to concoct soul-gathering pills. She was very satisfied. The age of these things is quite good. They should be able to give you a satisfactory answer. As she said this, she put away the storage pouch. Xiao Hua accompanied Zhuo Minghui and chatted for a while. Afterwards, he took his leave and followed Xiang Yang back to their cave. After a while, Zhuo Minghui flew out of the cave and headed towards mythical Thunder Palace. Xiao Hua and the other 2 sat down in the immortal cave. Xiang Yang couldn't wait to ask about Xiao Hua's cultivation. Xiao Hua's cultivation speed in this year could be considered normal, so he didn't hide anything and answered the general questions truthfully. After Xiang Yang finished asking, Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment and also asked, Eldest senior martial brother, I have a question about foundation establishment cultivation methods. What? You still looked at the foundation establishment cultivation methods first? Xiang Yang frowned. Didn't I already tell you about the foundation establishment cultivation methods? It's not suitable for you to look at now. I'm afraid it will affect your cultivation. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Eldest senior martial brother is thinking too much. I only looked at the meridians. I didn't look at any cultivation methods at all. So it's like that. Xiang Yang's complexion relaxed a little. He nodded and said, Then what's the problem with the meridians? Xiao Hua bit his lips and asked with some hesitation. It's like this. I want to ask, why does the foundation establishment cultivation method start by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the new meridians? Why not continue to refine it in the previous meridians? The previous meridians? Xiang Yang asked curiously. You've already used the previous meridians? If you don't open new meridians, how can you increase your cultivation? Little brother's meaning is, why don't you break through the barrier of the meridians and open up new meridians like the previous meridians of the Qi condensation realm, but instead return to the Dantian and open up new meridians? Xiao Hua explained. So the Qi refining meridians have already been used? How can you open new meridians? Xiang Yang asked back. How do you know there aren't any new meridians? What if there are more? Xiao Hua smiled. There's still other meridians? Xiang Yang was greatly surprised. He had never thought of this kind of question. Hearing it now was very refreshing. He simply didn't know how to answer Xiao Hua. But Yin Xinglian at the side clapped her hands and said, He, youngest junior martial brother really knows how to think. This question is difficult for your eldest senior martial brother. Xiang Yang also wanted to cry and laugh. He shook his head with all his strength. Youngest junior martial brother's thinking is really outrageous. I have no way to answer. Then, eldest senior martial brother, how do you know that the meridians have been refined to the end? That there won't be any new meridians? Xiao Hua wanted to get to the bottom of this. Youngest junior martial brother, you haven't cultivated to the peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. When you enter the foundation establishment realm, you'll know. The peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm is different from the other layers of the Qi refining realm. Yin Xinglian looked at Xiang Yang and smiled. Husband, you should tell youngest junior martial brother about your foundation establishment realm. Although it's a bit early to say it now, it's still better than him blindly guessing at the side, right? Chapter 1571. Yes, that's right. Xiang Yang thought for a moment, then nodded and said, This is something that can only be said before you build your foundation. But if you think blindly like this, it's very easy to damage your cultivation. Brother will now say a few simple things so that you won't make a mistake. The specific things to pay attention to will have to wait until later. Moreover, I used 2 chances to build my foundation, so I should still tell you this lesson first. I'm all ears. Xiao Hua cupped his hands, very much enjoying the feeling of having someone give him pointers. Normally, after cultivating to the peak of each stage of Qi refinement, it's the process of reaching perfection. After making up for the gaps in the realm, a barrier will appear between the meridians. At this time, it depends on the amount of true Qi. If there's enough, then you can break through the barrier and enter the next level. Otherwise, your cultivation may forever stop at this level. Xiang Yang explained simply. But what about the peak of the 12th layer of Qi refinement? It's different from these. When the cultivation method reaches perfection, the true Qi will naturally change, and there will be signs of liquefaction. At this time, you have to take a foundation establishment pill. This foundation establishment pill has 2 effects. One is to provide medicinal power to break through to foundation establishment, and the other is to help condense true Qi into a liquid state. Then, if you don't take a foundation establishment pill at this time, and use other medicinal pills, or don't use medicinal pills at all, Xiao Hua suddenly asked, I don't know. Xiang Yang said awkwardly, That day, when I built my foundation, I encountered the signs of liquefaction. I was ecstatic, so I quickly took a foundation establishment pill. It's just that. Xiang Yang slightly sighed, looked at Yin Xinglian, who had a comforting smile on her face, and said again, "It's just that at that time, I was the only one in the Immortals' Cave in Myriad Thunder Valley. Master and Master's wife were nowhere to be found. Although I made some preparations, I only took 2 foundation establishment pills. My cultivation was still lacking, so 2 foundation establishment pills weren't enough to condense all the true chi in my meridians into a liquid state. I barely managed to refine the 2 foundation establishment pills, and after I failed to break through to foundation establishment, I could only look on helplessly as the liquefied true chi gradually reverted back to true chi." Seeing the loneliness on Xiang Yang's face, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Eldest senior brother, then have you ever regretted it?" Xiao Hua had already asked this question before, but now that he asked it again, it must be interesting. Xiang Yang looked at Yin Qinglian. The 2 people's eyes were filled with affection. Indeed, in this place, silence speaks louder than words. After waiting for a short moment, Xiao Hua coughed and asked again, "Eldest senior brother, then what happened after that?" After that, I cultivated in seclusion for another 50 years. Just as I was about to lose all hope, the true chi in my meridians suddenly showed signs of liquefying. At that time, I had 10 building foundation dawn in my storage pouch. So I immediately suppressed the ecstasy in my heart and refined them one by one. Finally, all the true chi in my meridians was transformed into true elemental energy. Xiang Yang lightly said, "That's strange. Eldest senior brother, you haven't consumed any other medicinal pills in the past 50 years? You didn't take another foundation establishment pill?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. In his opinion, since his magic power wasn't enough, he should have just taken some medicine. Who cared about medicinal pills? However, Xiang Yang shook his head. "My Imperial Thunder sect only has medicinal pills for those in the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. We don't have any medicinal pills for those who fail to build their foundation. Moreover, after Master came back, he only urged me to cultivate according to the cultivation method and didn't allow me to take any medicinal pills. As for why, I don't know." "Oh," Xiao Hua slightly nodded. He also knew that with Xiang Yang's honest temperament, he would have absolutely followed the arrangement. He wouldn't have deviated even a little bit. "Then, what about the accumulating spirit talisman? Eldest senior brother didn't use it?" Xiao Hua suddenly thought. Accumulating spirit talisman? Xiang Yang smiled bitterly. He looked at Yin Qinglian and said, "Not only me, but even your senior sister-in-law has never used it. Little junior brother, ordinary cultivators, as long as they have the chance to build their foundation, they would do it without any regard for their lives. Who would be willing to stay in the Qi refining realm?" Yin Qinglian said with a smile. "Only those heaven-sent geniuses who are extremely confident in building their foundation and are willing to take this risk to use the accumulating spirit talisman. As I said just now, the great circle of Qi refining is the natural perfection of the cultivation method. This is also commonly known as the small circle of Qi refining. If you use the accumulating spirit talisman, you can use the power of the talisman to forcefully delay the advancement of your realm and make the small circle of Qi refining even more perfect. That's the true great circle of Qi refining." Xiang Yang said somewhat enviously. It said that after cultivators at the great circle of Qi refining enter the foundation establishment realm, their magic power is 30% stronger than cultivators of the same realm. The most powerful ones might be 50% stronger. That much. Xiao Hua was slightly astonished. Of course. Otherwise, how could those extremely intelligent people stay in the Qi refining realm? Xiang Yang smacked his lips and said, "That's not all. Qi refining's divine sense is in the nurturing stage. The longer it's nurturing, the more room it has for growth in the future. Think about it. If your magic power is 50% stronger than people of the same realm, and your divine sense is also 50% stronger than people of the same realm, then how awe-inspiring is that? TCH, That's not awe-inspiring. Xiao Hua curled his lips in his heart. Although he was currently in the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm, killing someone in the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm wasn't a problem. This wasn't the same concept as people of the same realm. Little junior brother will enter the Foundation Establishment realm in a few years. Master and Master's wife are also in Myriad Thunder Valley. If there are no mishaps, little junior brother should have no problem entering the Foundation Establishment realm. Xiang Yang comforted him. You just need to cultivate peacefully and don't think too much. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua bowed and said. Soon after, the three of them talked about something and closed their eyes to cultivate. They waited until noon the next day, but Helpless still hadn't returned. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry. He listened to Helpless talk about the taboos and experiences of qi refining. Listening to it made him scratch his ears and cheeks. Xiaohua had never thought of these things before, but after trying them out, they were indeed useful. Just as they were talking, a crimson summoning talisman flew into the Immortal's cave. It was Zhuo Minghui calling them over. Xiaohua and the others arrived at Helpless Immortal's cave. As soon as they saw each other, Zhuo Minghui smiled and handed over a storage pouch. Xiaohua opened it in surprise. When he saw the soul-gathering pills and a lot of spirit stones inside, he couldn't help but feel extremely grateful. He said with a choked voice, Master's wife, I had nothing to do yesterday, so I went to Mythical Thunder Palace to see my senior sisters whom I haven't seen for a long time. And they praise your medicinal herbs very much. After exchanging them for spiritual pills, they also gave you some spirit stones. You should take them. Zhuo Minghui waved her hand as if she really was going to see her senior sisters, and exchanging them for spiritual pills was just a passing matter. Thank you, Master's wife. Xiaohua nodded and put them away. A divine sense swept past. It was Helpless who had returned from outside. Master! Xiang Yang and Yin Xinglian stood up and shouted. Xiaohua naturally also stood up. Helpless ignored Xiang Yang and Yin Xinglian. He only looked at Xiaohua and said, How come you're only at the peak of the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm? I thought you'd already cultivated to the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. Xiaohua was quite displeased with Helpless' snobbery and said embarrassedly, Disciple is actually quite stupid. I was barely able to cultivate to the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm. Oh, why are you suddenly saying that? Helpless said angrily, You're the hope of my Myriad Thunder Valley. If you don't build your foundation, I'll crush you to death. Husband, Yin Xinglian said with a frown. If you say that, how will Xiaohua feel? If he doesn't build his foundation, won't he be your disciple? If you don't want him, I'll take him as my disciple. Helpless, he rubbed his hands and said, I'm just afraid he'll be like Xiang Yang. Soon after, he clapped his hands helplessly and took out a jade box from his storage bag. He tossed it to Xiaohua and asked, Have you seen the secret technique to catalyze your divine sense? Xiaohua took the jade box. He was originally at a loss, but when he heard Helpless' question, he immediately understood what was inside the jade box. He smiled and said, Disciple has just cultivated to the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm, so I haven't had time to see the secret technique yet. Then he raised the jade box and said, Is this the rainbow cloud? Rainbow cloud my ass. Helplessly eating a mouthful of spirit fruit, he spat the core on the ground and cursed. This year, my Thunder Palace originally had a rainbow epiphyllum that had just matured, but it was snatched by Zhenyu, that old brat, one step ahead of us, saying that it was for his disciple, Zhen Yuqian. Motherfucker, this guy is really shameless. That disciple, named Wang Yunxiao, was clearly chosen by me first, and I even marked him with my divine sense. This old bastard actually took Wang Yunxiao away and treated him as his disciple. Unfortunately, they've already registered in the Jade Archive Hall. Otherwise, Speaking up to here, he looked helplessly at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, Wang Yunxiao is already at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. You have to work harder. You have to build your foundation before him. Oh, even if you can't be the first, you can't fall too far behind. Xiao Hua was speechless. He bowed and said, "Disciple understands." Then he said, "If this jade box isn't a rainbow cloud, then what is it?" "Nonsense. If it's not the rainbow cloud, then it's the jade Qilin spirit." Jade Qilin spirit. Xiao Hua was puzzled. When he opened the jade box, he saw something similar to a taro inside. It's just that this taro was like jade, and the layers of scales on top were like fish scales. "Master, little junior brother is a rogue cultivator. He doesn't know about this," Xiang Yang reminded. "AI, rogue cultivator," Xiao Hua said helplessly. He waved his hand and said, "You tell him." Little junior brother," Xiang Yang said with a smile. "It's actually very simple. This jade Qilin spirit is the same as the rainbow cloud. They both have the ability to stimulate divine sense. It's just that the rainbow cloud is too rare. It's not easy to find one. In comparison, this jade Qilin spirit is much more abundant. Many cultivation families use this jade Qilin spirit for their disciples to stimulate divine sense. However, the jade Qilin spirit's effect is much worse than the rainbow cloud. "Oh, so it's like that." Xiao Hua put away the jade box and said with a smile, "Thank you, Master. No need to thank me. No need to thank me. If there's nothing else, just go back and cultivate. Come see me when you've built your foundation." Xiao Hua waved his hand helplessly. "Disciple has a few questions. After I ask Master, I'll immediately return," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Quickly ask, quickly ask." Master, little junior brother is very talented." Xiang Yang was afraid that Xiao Hua would get angry, so he quickly said, "Disciple doesn't know how to answer the questions he asked." Is that so? Why don't you tell me?" Xiao Hua looked at Xiao Hua with surprise. Xiang Yang gave Xiao Hua a look, telling him not to say anything. He then repeated Xiao Hua's question. Sure enough, Xiao Hua immediately jumped up and said, "Damn it, I showed you the foundation establishment cultivation method, so you could go to the technique imparting pavilion and find an even higher level cultivation method than this one. You're actually looking for fun here. Don't you want to build your foundation?" "It can't be," Xiao Hua muttered. Beside him, Zhuo Minghui stopped him again and said, "Husband, this child is very curious. It's good that he can think more. You should talk to him. Don't let him go down the wrong path. AI, a disciple is as boring as a rock. I just took in one, and he's like the mountain ape at the door. How can I be so unlucky?" Xiao Hua sighed helplessly. He thought for a moment and said, "Actually, it's nothing. Think about it. Before the 12th layer of qi refining, can every cultivator break through to the next realm by taking medicinal pills? Of course not." Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of something. "Then, why can't they advance even if they take medicinal pills?" Xiao Hua asked helplessly. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "It must be the meridians, right? And you're quite smart." Xiao Hua glared at him helplessly. Meridians are the foundation of cultivation. All true qi and true essence are formed by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth through the meridians. Everyone's cultivation process is also the process of refining the meridians themselves. If the meridian's ability to refine has already reached its limit, do you think, even if there are more medicinal pills and more spiritual energy, it can still be refined? Disciple understands. It must be that after reaching the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining, the meridian's ability to refine true qi has also reached its peak. It can no longer produce more true qi. If one can't build their foundation in time, then their magic power can no longer increase. Xiao Hua continued. Exactly. Of course, this is the case for your eldest senior brother. What's the use of taking medicinal pills? He just needs to carefully comprehend his realm. If fate allows it, won't he be able to enter the foundation establishment realm? Xiao Hua looked helplessly at Xiang Yang and said, "Unfortunately, the difference between the second and the first time is too great. His achievements will always be limited." "But Master, doesn't the accumulating spirit talisman also force one's realm?" Xiao Hua asked. "You don't know shit. The accumulating spirit talisman doesn't force one's realm. It forces one's true qi to transform into true essence. That was the first time he built his foundation. He only used the accumulating spirit talisman's magic power to prolong the process as much as possible. During this prolonged process, because true essence is together with true chi for a long time, it will undergo a certain mutation. On the other hand, it can refine the meridians that were refined during the chi refining stage again with true essence, increasing the strength of the meridians. After entering the foundation establishment realm, one can have a few % more true essence than others. So that's how it is. Xiao Hua finally understood. So there were so many reasons behind this. However, the accumulating spirit talisman is admittedly a good thing, Xiao Hua helplessly said. But using the accumulating spirit talisman still has a great risk. Chapter 1572. When using the accumulating spirit talisman, if there's even the slightest bit of carelessness, the liquefied true essence will begin to transform back into true chi. That's not good. All of your previous efforts will be wasted. At best, you'll be beaten back to your original state and have to wait for the second foundation building. At worst, your meridians won't be able to hold too much true chi. Your meridians may break and your Tao will perish. Helplessly speaking, he looked at Xiao Hua and said, "Now that you know, do you still want to use the accumulating spirit talisman? Why not? If others can use it, I can also use it," Xiao Hua said without hesitation. Being competitive is the most undesirable thing in cultivation. Helplessly shaking his head. "Fine, I'm just being competitive," Xiao Hua secretly said. "You want me to build my foundation earlier, but you don't want me to be competitive?" Helplessly thinking, he said, "It's still early. Wait until you reach the 12th layer of chi refining. If your true chi is vigorous, then use it. If it's not, then you should just build your foundation. I'll listen to master's instructions," Xiao Hua bowed and said. Soon after, Xiao Hua asked a few more questions, especially those about divine sense and the Naiwan Palace, helplessly answering them all one by one. Don't look at Helplessly's impatient temper and somewhat irritable. In the aspect of cultivation, Helplessly was really amazing. When he talked about some cultivation experiences, Helplessly was very familiar with them. He explained the profound in simple terms and drew inferences about other things from one example, and so on. Helplessly, he got so excited that he stopped cultivating. He only talked about the stars in the night sky and welcomed the rising sun. Only then did he stop talking endlessly. Under Xiao Hua's worshipful gaze, he helplessly waved his hand and had Xiao Hua leave. Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian also followed him out. Before leaving, Xiang Yang couldn't help but repeatedly exhort, "Junior Marshal brother, this foundation establishment is really extremely difficult. You must not let your emotions affect your decisions. If there's anything I can help you with, you must tell me." Xiao Hua knew this was Xiang Yang's concern. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile, "How about this? If senior brother is willing, how about you protect me while I build my foundation?" "Great." A smile appeared on Xiang Yang's face. This was exactly what he wanted. However, when a cultivator in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm entered the foundation building realm, it was also the time when they were at their weakest. It was impossible for an ordinary person to be by their side. Although Xiang Yang was Xiao Hua's eldest senior martial brother, according to reason, he should be by Xiao Hua's side as a protector. But Xiao Hua, after all, didn't receive Xiang Yang's guidance since childhood. If he took the initiative to say it, it might not necessarily be somewhat reckless, and it also wouldn't be in line with Xiang Yang's timid nature. Now that Xiao Hua mentioned it without the slightest hesitation, it naturally meant that he didn't regard Xiang Yang as an outsider. How could Xiang Yang not be happy? However, junior brother still has a few years to go before he reaches the peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. Right now, we should break through the bottleneck of the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm and see if we can generate divine sense. Otherwise, we can only use the Jade Kirin fruit to accelerate the process," Xiang Yang said with a smile. Yes, I will listen to eldest senior brother's orders. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I'll return to the eastern ridge to cultivate first. If there's anything, I'll inform eldest senior brother. Soon after, Xiao Hua leaped into the air and flew towards the eastern mountain range. However, in the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Xiao Hua changed his mind. After a slight hesitation, he flew towards the shocking Thunder Palace. Along the way, Xiao Hua saw that there was no one around. He used the lightning escape technique and arrived in front of the Yanlei Palace in just a few hours. At this time, the Yanlei Palace was different from the last time. Although it was floating in the clouds, there was a long ladder that snaked downwards from the entrance of the Yanlei Palace. Inside the clouds, the Yanlei Palace actually emitted a faint lightning glow, causing the surroundings to flicker. Is today the time to impart the technique? Xiao Hua thought as his figure landed on the ladder. The ladder was also mysterious. Just as Xiao Hua's figure landed and was about to lift his leg to walk up, the ladder actually moved up by itself. Xiao Hua didn't need to move at all. His figure slowly walked towards the entrance of a Yanlei Palace. This is really interesting. Xiao Hua thought to himself. When he arrived at the entrance of a Yanlei Palace, it was a tall palace that looked no different from the Shualei Palace. Just as Xiao Hua was about to enter, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator came out of the palace. He looked at Xiao Hua up and down, then used his divine sense to scan him. He frowned and scolded. Where's your waste token? Why did you only come now? The technique, imparting disciple, has already been preaching for several hours. I'm afraid it's nearing the end. How can you step into the foundation establishment realm with this kind of slack? Xiao Hua smiled apologetically, took out his token and said, Senior, please know that Disciple's errand job is in the Eastern Mountain Range. It's very far from here. Yesterday, I couldn't stay in the shocking Thunder Palace, so I came late today. When the cultivator heard that Xiao Hua was in the Eastern Mountain Range, his face slightly changed. He took the token, scanned it with his divine sense, and handed it back. Quickly go in. The East Side Palace is preaching about the art of medicine. It's useful for you. You can go and listen. The West Side Palace is preaching about the foundation of techniques. It's also useful for new disciples like you. Yes, disciple understands. Thank you for the reminder, Senior. Xiao Hua bowed and entered the Yanlei Palace. Xiao Hua curiously looked at the main hall. The main hall of the Evolved Thunder Palace seemed to be different from the Bright Thunder Palace and the Spring Thunder Palace. The main hall wasn't big, it was square-shaped, and in the middle, there was a square pillar standing from top to bottom. The four sides of the main hall, as well as the roof above and the ground below, were all covered with many runes. These runes were engraved with intelligence and seemed to have a profound meaning. On the square pillar, there were countless tiny lightning threads flashing. These countless lightning threads formed different runes that moved around the entire pillar in a very orderly manner. This pillar looks a lot like a jade slip. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua released his perception and used his divine sense to read the jade slip to step into the pillar. Boom! When Xiao Hua's perception entered the pillar, a rumbling sound came from the jade slip. Xiao Hua didn't feel like he was looking at the jade slip. Instead, he felt the same as when he entered the illusion array. After a rumbling sound, a towering mountain range appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. This mountain range was completely crimson. This is... Before Xiao Hua could think of anything else, a tall and thin cultivator with white hair and beard, wearing a red Taoist robe, descended from the sky and landed on the crimson mountain range. Xiao Hua couldn't see through that cultivator's cultivation. Who is this? Following Xiao Hua's puzzlement, that cultivator patted his hand and took out a bead that was similar to the thunder-devouring bead from his storage pouch. Thunder-devouring bead? Xiao Hua was shocked. However, when he looked carefully, this thunder-devouring bead was even smaller than the one he had. Moreover, there were no lightning sparks around the bead. However, Xiao Hua could clearly see that there were countless lightning sparks lingering inside the small bead. Immediately after, the cultivator threw the thunder-devouring bead into the air and then grabbed it with his hand. As the cultivator slowly raised his hand, a large ball of lightning appeared from the thunder-devouring bead. As the cultivator raised his hand, the large ball of lightning flew into the air. Immediately after, the cultivator kept making hand seals. Every hand seal seemed to be played down, but wherever the hand seals were cast, a hurricane would appear in the air. Moreover, as the hand seals were cast, the lightning sparks emitted a dazzling brilliance. After a while, the cultivator opened his mouth and spat out a light purple brilliance into the lightning sparks. Suddenly, the lightning sparks emitted an extremely bright brilliance and gradually expanded. When it was about 100 feet wide, the cultivator pointed his finger, and the lightning sparks slowly fell and sank into the crimson mountain range. The cultivator's figure also disappeared along with the lightning sparks. Ancestor Qinyan? Xiaohua instantly understood that this cultivator was the founder of the Imperial Thunder sect, Qinyan. Sure enough, a moment later, a purple light shone from under the mountain range and spread in all directions like a ring. Ancestor Qinyan's figure suddenly appeared from the mountain range and kept making hand seals. The brilliance flashed continuously in the mountain range. As the brilliance went away, heavy dark clouds pressed down from the sky, and countless thin lightning sparks fell below the brilliance. Ancestor Qinyan's figure was like a god. Damn it, Ancestor's really awe-inspiring, Xiaohua secretly said. Immediately after, Xiaohua's eyes darkened again. When he could see clearly again, there were countless disciples on a mountain range and countless tall and majestic palaces. It was the current appearance of the Imperial Thunder sect. Just when Xiaohua didn't know how to retreat, the image of Ancestor Qinyan appeared in front of him again. Greetings, Ancestor. Xiaohua didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly bowed. Ancestor Qinyan ignored him and just flicked his sleeve. Xiaohua's figure suddenly rose up and fell into the palace in the clouds in mid-air. Isn't this the Yanlei Palace? Xiaohua was stunned, but when he was in a daze, he saw a tall and thin cultivator standing in front of the pillar of the Yanlei Palace. He looked very lost. Damn! Seeing the tall and thin figure, Xiaohua's heart moved. This seems to be... Before he could even think about it, his figure merged with the tall and skinny figure. Then Xiaohua's eyes shook slightly. When he opened his eyes, he had already retracted his perception. In front of him was still that pillar of lightning with restrained light. Xiaohua shook his head. He really couldn't distinguish whether he was in an illusion or in reality. He wanted to bite his finger to distinguish, but he felt that it was a bit embarrassing. At this moment, the door to the east side hall opened, and an early Foundation establishment cultivator walked out. He looked up at Xiaohua, who was standing in front of Pillar. His gaze swept over him, and without stopping, he walked into the inner hall. Behind that cultivator, dozens of aura-refining disciples rushed out. These disciples were of different ages and cultivation levels, ranging from the 4th layer to the 12th layer of aura refining. Xiaohua, a very familiar voice sounded. Chapter 1573. Hearing someone call out his name in surprise, Xiaohua smiled and looked at the group of disciples coming out of the side chamber. Among the many male disciples, there were 20 or so female disciples. They all had flower-like faces and were wearing colorful clothes. Not only did they attract Xiaohua's gaze, the gazes of the 100 or so young male disciples also fell on them from time to time. In front of the 20 or so female disciples, there were 2 female cultivators who were about the same height. One had a round face, round and smooth like a pearl, and the other had an oval face, looking elegant. The one who called out to Xiaohua was the round and smooth Shui. Hearing Shui call out Xiaohua's name, the gazes of the 100 or so disciples all fell on Xiaohua. The eyes of the cold and elegant female cultivator beside Shui also flashed with a trace of astonishment. Seeing everyone's gazes fall on him, Xiaohua felt slightly uncomfortable. He couldn't help but raise his hand to touch his nose and said with a bitter smile, "Shue shue, long time no see. How are you?" Seeing Xiao Hua's somewhat lazy movements, Shue shue couldn't help but feel her heartbeat faster. Her face was actually a bit hot, and her voice was much softer than before. She replied, I'm very good. How about you?" Seeing Shue shue like this, the hearts of the surrounding male disciples became bleak. In an instant, their gazes were like flying swords, piercing Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua looked around and sneered in his heart. He took a few steps forward and said with a smile, "Look at I's spirited appearance. How could I not be good?" Not only did Shue shue's face smile, but the surrounding dozen or so female disciples also covered their mouths and giggled. Junior sister Shue, is this the Xiao Hua you often mention?" The cold and elegant female cultivator beside her also had a rare smile on her face. She moved closer to Shue shue's ear and whispered, "And it's him." Shue shue's voice was like a mosquito. "This Xiao Hua is really amazing. Previously, you said he was only in the middle of the 10th level of qi refining. Look, it's only been a little over a year, and he's actually at the peak of the 11th level of qi refining." The female cultivator's voice was indifferent, but traces of competitiveness could be heard. Is that so?" As soon as Shue shue saw Xiao Hua, her heart was filled with joy. How could she pay attention to his cultivation level? When she heard what her senior sister said, she promptly raised her head. Wasn't Xiao Hua at the peak of the 11th layer of qi refining? Junior brother Xiao. Right at this moment, another voice sounded from behind the crowd. When Xiao Hua looked up, he saw Wang Yinxiao, Minggu, Yuan Bo, and the others. Xiao Hua looks at the dozen or so 10th and 11th layer qi refining disciples clustered behind these three people. He says with a smile, "Hello, three senior martial brothers. Long time no see. Both of you are in the 12th layer of qi refining. I'm truly envious." Wang Yinxiao took a few steps forward, cupped his fists, and said, "Same here. We've all advanced from the middle of the 11th layer to the middle of the 12th layer. And junior martial brother Xiao has also advanced from the middle of the 10th layer to the peak of the 11th layer. Junior martial brother Xiao, you've made great progress." Xiao Hua cupped his fists in return and said, That's incomparable. That's incomparable. I still don't know when I'll be able to step into the 12th layer." Minggu and Yuan Bo glanced at Xiao Hua, then shifted their gazes to Shue shue and the other female cultivator. Seeing the two whispering to each other and occasionally glancing at Xiao Hua, their eyes were filled with displeasure. They glanced at each other again, then smiled and said, "Congratulations, junior martial brother Xiao. You've finally broken free from the hardships of being a loose cultivator." Congratulations to you too. Xiao Hua didn't understand why they would mention loose cultivators like this, so he only replied with a smile. Everyone came out of the side hall. Some people walked past Xiao Hua, but there were also quite a few people who stopped and looked at Xiao Hua and the others with interest. But when they heard that Xiao Hua was a loose cultivator, their eyes immediately revealed a kind of disdain. They raised their pauses again, and each of them dispersed. Apart from a few younger disciples behind Shue shue, the rest of the female disciples also left one after another. The cold and elegant female cultivator rolled her eyes a few times, then smiled and said, "Shue shue, since you met an old friend, you might as well wait here for a moment. I will return to Sun Lei Palace first." "Don't." Shue shue was a bit anxious. She grabbed the female cultivator's sleeve and said, "Senior Marshal Sister Shue, don't be anxious. This disciple will leave after saying a few words to him." When Wang Yinxiao saw this, his gaze slightly swept over Minggu and Yuan Bo. He cupped his fists and said to Xiao Hua, "Junior martial brother Xiao, you and I live very close to each other. Although we haven't seen each other for a long time, if you return to fledgling Thunder Peak, you'd better send me a sound transmission talisman. Your old friend is still here, so I won't take up any more of your time." With that said, he nodded and walked away. Minggu and Yuan Bo didn't seem to want to leave. However, when they saw that Wang Yinxiao had left, followed by a few male disciples. They also cupped their fists towards Xiao Hua with extreme helplessness. Then, they nodded towards Xue Xue and the others and left Sun Lei Palace. Before leaving, they viciously looked back. But at this time, Xiao Hua didn't see it, because Xue Xue pulled the cold and elegant female disciple in front of Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Xiao Hua, this is my senior martial sister. Her name is Sun Shu. Greetings, senior martial sister Shui." Xiao Hua had a smile on his face. He bowed and said, "This disciple has seen Senior Sun Ming's elegant demeanor at Spring Thunder Palace. I really envy you all. How about Senior Martial Brother, Xiao, also enter our Sun Lei Palace?" A few female disciples behind Xue Xue, who looked exceptionally intelligent, said with a smile, Go, you all wait outside the palace." Xue Xue waved her hand, looking like a senior martial sister. Yes, we will obey Senior Martial Sister Xue's orders." Those female disciples smiled like flowers and ran out of Sun Lei Palace. "Xiao Hua, I heard you went to the Eastern Ridge Her Garden?" Xue Xue blinked her large eyes and looked at Xiao Hua with great concern. "That place is so far away from Sun Lei Palace and also not close to Zhenlei Palace. Why did you choose that place? The Eastern Ridge Herb Garden?" Sun Shu was also stunned. Her beautiful eyes looked at Xiao Hua and said, very strangely, "Wasn't that herb garden abandoned long ago? Even if you want to look after the spirit herbs, you don't have to go to the Eastern Ridge." Xiao Hua scratched his head and said, "I don't know how to craft talismans, nor do I know how to refine pills. I also don't want to do other chores, so I naturally chose the easy job of looking after them. Moreover, I was born as a loose cultivator. If others look down on me, I might as well stay far away from them and save myself the trouble. Junior Martial Brother, Xiao, says it so easily. I'm afraid you have ulterior motives, right?" Sun Shu said with a smile. "Won't you know once you see fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation increase?" "Oh, haha." Xiao Hua laughed and didn't explain. He looked at the side hall behind Xue Xue and said curiously, "This is my Zhen Lei Palace's Yin Lei Palace. Why did Sun Lei Palace's disciples come to listen to a technique imparting disciples' lecture?" Xue Xue covered her mouth and laughed. "Senior Martial Brother Xiao, have you never heard of a technique imparting disciples' lecture? On the first day of every month, disciples of each Thunder Palace can go to other Thunder Palaces to listen to lectures. Senior Martial Sister Sun had a sudden impulse, so we came to Zhen Lei Palace. I didn't expect. What and what?" Xue Xue, Sun Shu retorted from aside. "Wasn't it your idea to come to Zhen Lei Palace? What does it have to do with I? And you bumped into that Yuan Bo as soon as you arrived and even asked him about something in a low voice. So you were asking about this?" Sun Shu continued. "Senior Martial Sister," Xue Xue said coquettishly with a burning face. At this time, at the entrance of Yin Lei Palace, several Sun Lei Palace's disciples who just went out poked their heads out and shouted, "Senior Martial Sister Xue, the palace sent a message telling us to go back earlier." Xue Xue heard and her face turned cold. She said to Xiao Hua, "The palace is urging me, so I won't say much to you. If you have nothing to do, send me a message too. Last time, you actually didn't tell me you were in Dongling. Haha, I was afraid of delaying your cultivation." Xiao Hua touched his nose and laughed. "Just remember it in the future." "Okay." Xue Xue laughed and pulled Sun Shu's hand to leave quickly. She still turned her head halfway. "Don't forget." I know. Go quickly." Xiao Hua grinned and waved his hand a few times. After leaving Yin Lei Palace, Xue Xue and the others flew into the air. Sun Shu suddenly asked in a low voice, "Xue Xue, this Xiao Hua seems to be very mysterious." "Mysterious?" Xue Xue was slightly stunned and said very strangely, "I've known him for so long, but I didn't feel it." "Haha, you're in this mountain, so deep in the clouds you don't know." Sun Shu laughed. "Look at him. He doesn't even know that the disciples of the Thunder Palace are taught by each other. It's like this is the first time he came to Yin Lei Palace, and he's never listened to the teachings of the senior brothers before. Think about it. He's a loose cultivator, but now he actually used more than a year to cultivate from the middle of the 10th level to the peak of the 11th level. Although he can't be considered outstanding in my Thunder Palace, it's still impressive. If he's not mysterious, who is? Xue Xue shook her head. Maybe his master taught him more? Who's Xiaohua's master? Sun Shu shook his head. You also know that before we build foundation, our masters rarely give us pointers, and he's a loose cultivator, so his master's pointers are even less. Xiaohua's master's name is helplessness. Xue Xue said. Even if it's not his master's pointers, maybe it's his senior brother's. Helplessness. Sun Shu was stunned. Then the corners of his mouth rose. He said with a smile, "Then I know who Xiaohua's senior brother is." "Who?" Xue Xue asked curiously. "Is his senior brother very famous?" Then the two people's topic of conversation changed from Xiaohua to Xiang Yang's story. Back to Xiaohua. After watching Xue Xue and the others leave, he took a step forward and walked toward the closed door on his left. When he arrived in front of the door, Xiaohua tilted his head to listen. It was very quiet inside, without any sound, so Xiaohua stretched out his hand and gently pushed. The door quietly opened. Suddenly, a clear voice entered Xiaohua's ears. Through the half-closed door, Xiaohua saw a rather large side hall with several hundred disciples. These disciples were all sitting in a circle on the ground. In front of the center, a foundation-building cultivator was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. He was stretching out a hand and slowly forming hand seals. Listening to the cultivator's voice, it seemed like he was chanting some kind of spell. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then quietly walked in. He closed the door behind him and walked behind the outermost disciple. He also sat cross-legged and listened to the cultivator's lecture in front of him. After listening for a while, Xiaohua could tell that the cultivator was talking about the minor confinement art. It was a spell that 10th and 11th layer Qi refining cultivators could use. After talking for a while, the cultivator stopped and called a disciple to demonstrate. Unfortunately, that disciple didn't seem to be proficient. He waved his hand several times, but still couldn't cast the minor confinement art. Seeing bean-sized beads of sweat dripping from his forehead, the foundation-building senior brother sneered and said, "Sit down. In the future, when you listen to lectures, you have to pay attention." When that disciple sat down with a flushed face, the foundation-building cultivator unexpectedly looked at Xiaohua. "Oh no!" Xiaohua was slightly startled. Sure enough, the foundation-building senior brother pointed at him and said, "What's your name? Stand up." Xiaohua smiled bitterly in his heart. He stood up and bowed, saying, "Disciple Xiaohua greets senior. Are you a disciple of my Thunderclap Palace?" "Yes." "Then that's strange. How come I have never seen you before? Moreover, today you actually came in right after I was about to finish my lecture. You don't know Ai's temper? That disciple is on duty at the Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden. It's really too far from my Thunderclap Palace, so disciple asked for the steward's order to cultivate on my own in the Eastern Ridge." Xiaohua said very apologetically. "This is disciple's first time listening to a lecture. I really don't understand senior's rules." And that cultivator obviously knew how far the Eastern Ridge was. He waved his hand and said, "Since you came, then you have to understand." "Did you understand what I said just now?" "Disciple understands." "Good, you can cast it and see." Hearing this, Xiaohua waved his hand and deliberately made the wrong hand seal. That minor confinement art naturally couldn't be used. That cultivator shook his head slightly and gave a few pointers. Xiaohua listened. It was precisely the part he made the wrong hand seal. After correcting it, he cast the minor confinement art. Not much. Your comprehension is quite high." That foundation establishment cultivator nodded and said, "Admittedly, you're on duty at the Eastern Ridge, but you also have to prioritize cultivation. If you have free time, it's better to come back and listen to lectures more often." "Yes, disciple understands," Xiaohua said respectfully. "All right, that's all for today. 10 days later, I will lecture on palm lightning again." Finished speaking, that cultivator stood up. All the disciples opened up a path and bowed. say, respectfully sees Senior off. Forget it. That cultivator flicked his sleeves and walked out of the side chamber with quick steps. Xiaohua was right behind everyone, so he was naturally the first to come out of the side chamber. Seeing that cultivator walking towards the inner hall, he immediately ran 2 steps forward and said in a low voice, Senior, disciple has something to ask. That cultivator turned his head to look at Xiaohua and said with a smile, if there's anything you don't understand about the technique I taught today, I can naturally answer. Previous ones? Forgive I for not answering. I dare not. Disciple just wants to ask Senior where our Thunderclap Palace's technique imparting pavilion is. Xiaohua said respectfully. Technique imparting pavilion? What are you going there for? That cultivator looked at Xiaohua and said curiously, you haven't reached the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, so it's still not the time to look for a technique, right? Hee. Disciple just wants to look up some ancient books. Senior, please show me the way. Xiaohua said with a smile. And follow I. That cultivator turned around and said. Chapter 1574. Xiaohua followed the foundation building cultivator into the inner hall. After walking for the time it took to smoke a cigarette, several divine senses swept past Xiaohua's body, but they didn't stop. After turning into a corridor, there was a small projector wall. On the projector wall, there was a huge picture. On the picture was an antique pavilion. The door of the pavilion was half closed, and there was a plaque on the door with the words, Technique Imparting Pavilion, written on it. Seeing the cultivator stop in front of the picture, Xiaohua was a bit dazed. He secretly said, could it be, this is the Technique Transmission Pavilion? Sure enough, he heard the cultivator point his hand and say, take out your identity tablet and throw it into the picture. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua answered and took out the tablet. After hesitating for a moment, he threw the tablet into the picture. As soon as the tablet touched the picture on the screen wall, the picture emitted a trace of lightning that struck the tablet. Strangely enough, a trace of lightning also flashed from the tablet and collided with the lightning that struck it. The 2 streaks of lightning disappeared at the same time, and the tablet sank into the picture. After a moment, the whole picture emitted a tricolored brilliance. The brilliance flashed, and the picture disappeared. What appeared in front of Xiaohua was a courtyard door that was the same size as the picture. Through the courtyard door, not far ahead, there was a pavilion that was exactly the same as the one in the picture, just now standing in the center of the courtyard. Just as Xiaohua was staring, a middle-stage foundation building cultivator came out from the courtyard door, holding Xiaohua's tablet in his hand. He looked at Xiaohua and asked, You're Xiaohua. Disciple is. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. Why did you come to the Technique Transmission Pavilion? Xiaohua didn't answer. He turned around and said to the foundation building cultivator who brought him here, Thank you for leading the way, Senior. You're welcome. The cultivator laughed, flicked his big sleeve, and turned around to leave. When the cultivator walked far away, Xiaohua clapped his hand and took out the sect master's tablet, handing it over. Disciple has something to do in the Technique Transmission Pavilion. Senior, please check the tablet. Oh. The foundation building cultivator stared blankly at first, but when he saw the sect master command tablet, he was slightly startled. After repeatedly examining it, he handed it back to Xiaohua along with the identity tablet. He said, according to the sect master command tablet, you can look it up in the Technique Inheritance Pavilion, but you can't take it out. Yes, disciple understands. Xiaohua received the sect master token and replied, and come in. That cultivator turned around and entered the courtyard. Xiaohua followed him in. When Xiaohua's figure turned around the courtyard door, a tricolored brilliance flashed, and that picture appeared again. The entire screen wall returned to its previous appearance. The real Inheritance Technique Pavilion was different from the picture. It was surrounded by Foundation Establishment disciples. The Foundation Establishment cultivator didn't lead Xiaohua to the Inheritance Technique Pavilion. Instead, he led him to a small house next to the Inheritance Technique Pavilion. Reporting to Marshal Uncle, there's an aura-refining disciple with the sect master's order who wants to come to the technique imparting pavilion to look at the ancient records. The Foundation establishment cultivator walked to the entrance of the room and reported respectfully. A very valiant divine sense was emitted from the small house. It circled around Xiao Hua's body a few times, and a lazy voice sounded. Has the sect master's order been examined? Reporting to Marshal Uncle, it has been examined. It was indeed issued by the sect master. And then let him in. It's just that this disciple's sect master's order is somewhat special. It seems the sect master has decreed that he can enter the technique inheritance pavilions of the 8 great lightning palaces. That cultivator said cautiously. Oh, this disciple is called Xiao Hua, right? Yes, Marshal Uncle understands. He's indeed Xiao Hua. And let him in. The sect master has long passed down a decree. Cultivation methods and magic arts that are a level higher than his can all be looked at. It's just that he can't take it out of the technique inheritance pavilion. A trace of extraordinary splendor flashed through that cultivator's eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Yes, disciple understands." Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Come with this old man." Xiao Hua nodded, then rushed into the small house and bowed. "Thank you, senior." It was quiet inside the small house, as if no one had heard anything. Seeing that there was no movement, Xiao Hua also turned around and followed that cultivator into the pavilion. They walked all the way to the door, then the cultivator pointed with his hand and said, "Take your identity tablet and go in yourself." Then, he turned around and walked to a place not far from the pavilion. There was a praying mat placed on the ground there. He sat down cross-legged and no longer paid attention to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He respectfully bowed and thanked the cultivator's back. Only then did he take out his identity tablet and step into the pavilion. The pavilion's door wasn't high. It was carved out of bronze-colored wood. It didn't look too different from the study of a mortal family. Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked. He very easily passed through that door. There was actually no restriction at all. Strange. Xiao Hua was greatly surprised. The restriction outside is so peculiar. Inside, not waiting for him to give birth to this thought, suddenly, from inside the pavilion, a large clump of lightning net flashing with lightning whistled and rushed toward Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't even see the situation inside the pavilion clearly before he was wrapped in the lightning net. Motherfucker, Xiao Hua's back instantly broke out in cold sweat. Fortunately, he also firmly believed that this lightning net would not harm him in any way. Although his transcendence energy was attracted by the lightning net and seemed to want to leave his body, he still forcibly suppressed it. Sure enough, just when he wasn't affected by the lightning net, the identity tablet in his hand emitted extremely faint lightning. It was different from when he entered the painting just now. Although the lightning was extremely small and faint, once it came into contact with the lightning net was like an illusion. It only flashed for a moment and then disappeared. After the lightning net disappeared, Xiao Hua finally saw everything inside the pavilion clearly. However, Xiao Hua's expression suddenly became dumbfounded. This pavilion wasn't large. It was only several tens of feet long. On the pavilion's surrounding walls, there were paintings that were more than half the height of a person hanging. The center of the pavilion wasn't like what Xiao Hua imagined. There were bookshelves, and there were also no jade slips placed on top of the bookshelves. There were only fist-sized balls of light. Counting them carefully, there were as many as 9 balls of light. Each ball of light was rotating in a fixed place, and the 9 balls of light seemed to form a very mysterious magic formation. This, Xiao Hua somewhat scratched his head. The cultivation method. Where is it? Even though Xiao Hua walked through the entire pavilion and looked at the seemingly existing second floor, there was no ladder that could lead to it. Just when Xiao Hua turned around and wanted to go out and ask, one of the paintings on the wall beside Xiao Hua suddenly emitted a faint lightning. That lightning swayed and cast on the floor of the pavilion. From that painting, A cultivator whose cultivation couldn't be seen walked out. Xiao Hua was startled. He quickly retreated a few steps and respectfully looked at the cultivator. He saw that the cultivator's figure was originally nothingness, but then it gradually solidified. When the light and shadow turned into a real person, the lightning that was projected on the ground immediately returned to the painting. And that cultivator slightly tilted his head and glanced at Xiao Hua. He walked to the side of a ball of light and used his hand to point. That ball of light suddenly enlarged. The cultivator patted his hand and took out a jade slip. Then he threw it into the ball of light. Then, with another point, that ball of light shrank and returned to its original position. Martial ancestor, Xiao Hua saw that the cultivator was about to leave and quickly called out, "Disciple Xiao Hua wants to ask for guidance from martial ancestor." "Oh, what do you want?" The cultivator turned his head and asked very indifferently. "This is the first time Disciple has come here to look up the ancient records. I don't know how to look it up. Martial ancestor, please instruct me." Xiao Hua respectfully asked, "And Zhen Zheng and the others didn't explain to you how to use it?" The cultivator frowned and said very unhappily, "This disciple didn't ask." Xiao Hua saw that the cultivator was unhappy and quickly smiled apologetically. "I'm afraid martial uncle and the others thought disciple knew." "Hey, you're thinking for others." That cultivator snorted from his nose and pointed with his hand. "Within these few halos is the place where my technique imparting pavilion stores ancient records. You only need to throw your identity tablet into it, and the halos will naturally lead you in." After saying that, the cultivator didn't stay and left the technique imparting pavilion. "Oh, so it's like that." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and sent that cultivator off. Looking at the 9 balls of light around him, he didn't know which one was which. Originally, he wanted to go out and ask, but on second thought, there were only 9. Wouldn't it be fine to try them one by one? Thinking this, Xiao Hua took out his identity tablet and tried to throw it into the ball of light next to him. Unexpectedly, after the identity tablet was thrown in, that ball of light spun rapidly and slowly emitted a layer of orange-red brilliance. The brilliance didn't last long, and Xiao Hua's identity tablet was thrown out again. "Hee, I'm afraid I won't be able to do good." Xiao Hua understood that his identity tablet should be like what that senior he'd never met said. It could only enter the halos of foundation building and aura refining cultivation techniques. Sure enough, after Xiao Hua walked towards the door and tried to throw his identity tablet in, that ball of light spun and emitted an emerald green brilliance. Soon after, from that ball of light, a flight of stairs floated in the air and extended to Xiao Hua's feet. "Wonderful!" Xiao Hua almost clapped his hands. Soon after, he stepped onto the stairs. Sure enough, the stairs automatically shrank, and Xiao Hua's figure shrunk even more. As the stairs unexpectedly flew into the ball of light and disappeared, the entire pavilion immediately returned to its previous tranquility. Not long after, the ball of light that Xiao Hua entered suddenly started to spin again. Soon after, it expanded and another flight of stairs extended from the ball of light. A middle-stage foundation building cultivator walked down the stairs with a jade slip in his hand. As the stairs moved, a small inch-long person gradually grew bigger. By the time it landed on the ground, it already had the appearance of an ordinary person. Immediately after, that flight of stairs didn't shrink, and Xiao Hua walked out from the ball of light. He walked to the cultivator's side and bowed with a smile. "Martial uncle, thank you for your guidance." That cultivator didn't say much and clapped his hands. He took out an identity tablet and threw it towards the wall. It was a blank picture scroll. Just like before, the picture scroll projected a brilliance of lightning. That cultivator took a step forward and the brilliance suddenly disappeared. The cultivator flew into the picture scroll and disappeared. Looking at the picture scroll again, it actually gradually revealed a splash ink painting. The mountain in the painting looked very majestic. Chapter 1575. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded. He looked around and saw that only 30% of the paintings on the wall had different pictures. Presumably, they were all occupied by people. And this painting has its own space. Inside it is a quiet room. Those who take the cultivation methods of the technique imparting pavilion are not allowed to take them out of the pavilion, so they have to comprehend them in this quiet room. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. He then looked at the ball of light that just came out, and a trace of a bitter smile appeared on his face. Although the ball of light looks small from the outside, the space inside is extremely large. There are many jade slips. The jade slips are divided into talisman crafting, alchemy, cultivation methods, incantations, and so on. They are all placed in different areas. At the same time, there are several Foundation establishment disciples in the space also looking through ancient books. Xiao Hua is currently at the 11th layer of qi refining, so he doesn't dare to reveal too much of his perception. Seeing that the inside is full of jade slips, he just casually looked through them and didn't use his perception to probe. However, looking at the few jade slips in the cultivation method area, and then looking at the talisman crafting, alchemy, incantations, and so on, Xiao Hua understood. Even in the Imperial Thunder sect, cultivation methods are extremely scarce. Standing in the pavilion, Xiao Hua pondered for a moment, then threw the token into the ball of light next to the Foundation establishment light ball. Sure enough, this ball of light also released a flight of stairs. Needless to say, this should be the qi refining light ball. Xiao Hua stepped onto the flight of stairs and entered the ball of light. After the time it takes to eat a meal, he came out of the ball of light. At this time, Xiao Hua held two small booklets in his hands and a trace of a smile on his face. Soon after, Xiao Hua, like the Foundation establishment cultivator, also threw the token into a blank scroll and entered the quiet room. For 10 days in a row, Xiao Hua stayed in the technique imparting pavilion. He constantly took out cultivation methods from the balls of light, went to the quiet room to study them, and then changed to take out other cultivation methods. Alas, these cultivation methods, only 50% of them are complete. The rest are mostly incomplete cultivation methods collected from other places in the country of Xi. And within these 50% cultivation methods, I feel that half of them are similar, only adjusted according to different constitutions. If I really cultivate it, it might not be as fast as I's Heavenly Laws embodiment technique. After Xiao Hua placed the cultivation technique back into the ball of light, he thought to himself, it's true that I can comprehend it in the quiet room, but the spiritual qi of heaven and earth inside is insufficient, so it's very difficult to make any breakthroughs. Right now, I don't need to look at cultivation methods anymore. I should look at spells and the like first. That's the right thing to do. After watching for several more days, Xiao Hua finally came out from the Technique Inheritance Pavilion. Seeing that the Foundation building disciples on duty all around paid no attention to him, he could only cup his hands and walk away. After returning to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, Xiao Hua opened the magic array and checked his cave and alchemy room. There were no traces of anything. Then, he relaxed and went into seclusion to cultivate. Unknowingly, another 10 days had passed. At noon, Xiao Hua had just placed an absorption pill into his mouth. That trace of medicinal power had just been refined and transformed into true qi. Xiao Hua only felt that the true qi within his meridians had begun to slightly fluctuate. Soon after, as if it was boiling, the true qi began to rapidly circulate along the meridians within his body. Wonderful! Xiao Hua understood that he was about to break through the barrier of the 11th layer of the qi refining realm. Thus, he focused his mind and completely refined the medicinal power of the absorption pill. Then, he urged his true qi to break through the barrier. Just like other qi refining cultivators, breaking through the barrier was far from difficult for Xiao Hua. He only felt his body lighten as his true qi broke through the new meridians. It was like mercury flowing down the ground, incomparably smooth. But right at this moment, a strange change occurred. The magic power around Xiao Hua's body suddenly began to violently tremble, emitting a strange fluctuation. That fluctuation became increasingly intense. This fluctuation was like a kind of flame, instantly igniting all the true chi within his meridians. That true chi was formed from heart fire. Heart fire flowed along the meridians without stop, very similar to when Xiaohua refined the fire essence flame crystal. However, every time this heart fire moved, Xiaohua's heart would dry up by a bit. In his heart, there was a kind of longing for a sweet rain. At the same time, every time the heart fire moved, there was a tendency for it to break free from the shackles of the meridians. However, this heart fire was firmly blocked by the meridians. This is the opportunity to stimulate divine sense. It's just as eldest senior brother said. But why did this heart fire ignite on its own? I haven't activated the secret technique yet, have I? Xiaohua's spirit was blessed, and it was a very familiar feeling. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out the rainbow epiphyllum that had been growing for who knows how long. In his heart, he silently chanted the secret technique to stimulate divine sense. With a wave of his hand, heart fire came out from Xiaohua's 5 fingers. The thick rainbow epiphyllum and the several zhonglong rainbow were roasted by this heart fire, immediately turning into a large ball of 7-colored liquid. It slightly rotated in Xiaohua's hand, looking very gorgeous. This isn't a bit big. Xiaohua was somewhat dumbfounded. Of course, other people's rainbow epiphyllum were at most 100 years old. After melting, it was only the size of a soybean. How could it compare to his big one? I don't care. Xiaohua was the most greedy. He knew that this rainbow epiphyllum was very old, and he was unwilling to use only a little. Then he clenched his teeth and waved his hand. That large ball of 7-colored liquid flew towards Xiaohua's head. Speaking of which, it was also strange. The 7-colored liquid that was originally larger than Xiaohua's head, under the Imperial Thunder Sect's secret technique, actually gradually shrank. By the time it touched Xiaohua's forehead, it had already been compressed to the size of a thumb. It directly shot into the long-disappeared swastika character on Xiaohua's forehead. With a tongue sound, the 7-colored liquid entering Xiaohua's body was like adding oil to the fire. The heart fire in Xiaohua's meridians suddenly flourished, enveloping Xiaohua's entire meridians within the heart fire. Although Xiaohua had the experience of refining the fire essence flame crystal, he was still somewhat bewildered. He didn't dare to be negligent and activated the secret technique, sending the 7-colored liquid to his Naiwan palace. However, a strange thing happened. The 7-colored liquid didn't condense into a small dot like the secret technique said. Instead, it condensed into a rather large sphere. In his perception, it was even larger than Xiaohua's head. According to the guidance of the secret technique, Xiaohua should have urged this 7-colored sphere to slowly rotate, absorbing the heart fire in his meridians into this sphere. He should have used the heart fire to forge this 7-colored sphere, giving birth to the first strand of divine sense. However, Xiaohua's 7-colored sphere was truly too large. The secret technique simply couldn't move it. At this time, Xiaohua's arrow was already knocked on the bow. He had no choice but to brace himself and activate the secret technique, attracting the heart fire to forge the sphere. Because the sphere didn't rotate, the heart fire couldn't be easily attracted over. The heart fire that Xiaohua spent a Herculean effort to get was simply a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. It was of no use at all. It couldn't even refine a single bit of the 7-colored sphere. This is bad. I'm too greedy. Xiaohua was somewhat regretful. It would have been better to use that jade Kirin fruit. However, at this time, the Naiwan Palace was occupied by that enormous 7-colored sphere. How could it still contain the jade Qilin fruit? Besides, who knew if there would be a problem if the rainbow epiphyllum and the jade Qilin fruit both melted at the same time? What should I do? Xiaohua was practically sweating like rain. Suddenly, on Xiaohua's forehead, where the 7-colored liquid had entered, the swastika character flashed out due to the effect of the rainbow epiphyllum. It reflected the seven-colored liquid and emitted a faint Buddhist light. That's right. Don't I also know the exquisite leaf sutra? Xiao Hua suddenly thought. It seemed that this situation had an extremely similar feeling to the first step of refining relics in the exquisite leaf sutra. Thus, Xiao Hua put aside the Imperial Thunder Sect's secret technique that stimulated divine sense and recalled the contents of the exquisite leaf sutra. Then, according to the records in the Heart Sutra, he began to temper himself. As Xiao Hua tempered the seven-colored liquid in the Niwen Palace, the swastika character on his forehead became more and more obvious, and the Buddhist light also became more and more intense. However, this Buddhist light didn't shoot far and only enveloped Xiao Hua. In his meridians, the raging heart fire didn't extinguish because Xiao Hua gave up on the secret technique, nor did it go out of control because the seven-colored liquid didn't absorb it. Instead, it slowly circulated gently in Xiao Hua's meridians like true qi. At the same time, the reverse light in the space stopped rotating, and a tranquil and serene atmosphere filled the entire space. Little Silver and Little Yellow both fell into a deep sleep. At this time, the strange starlight also shot in and was refined one by the heart fire. After who knew how much time had passed, following the tempering of the exquisite leaf sutra, the seven-colored sphere gradually changed shape. A Buddha with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground with an expression of supreme benevolence gradually revealed a vague outline. It was just that this outline was very rough, and most of it was nothingness. So much so that after a slight flash, it only left behind a faint shadow. Of course, the strangest thing was that the Niwen Palace where the Buddha's relic was located suddenly bulged out, as if the Buddha had an enormous belly. The Buddha's relic was also slowly rotating along with the spinning swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead. The Buddha's relic's empty, illusory face seemed to overlook everything in the world as it rotated. Following Xiao Hua's sigh, his Buddha's relic stopped rotating and faced the same direction as Xiao Hua. The swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead also flashed a few times, and the entire Buddha's light converged, then disappeared without a trace. Although Xiao Hua sighed, he didn't open his eyes. At this time, his perception, that's not right. According to the Exquisite Leaf Sutra, his perception should be Buddhist awareness. This Buddhist awareness was born from the Buddha's relic, and was who knew how many times more tyrannical than before. Everything within several hundred feet of him was within his Buddhist awareness. Damn it, this shouldn't be divine sense, right? After seeing Buddhist awareness, Xiao Hua wasn't happy at all. Instead, he was a little worried. He was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, not a disciple of some Buddhist sect. Without divine sense, how was he going to explain this to his master and grandmaster? How was he going to cultivate after he reached foundation establishment? He clearly didn't have divine sense. So how was he going to control magic artifacts and even magic treasures in the future? Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Xiao Hua warned himself again. Chapter 1576. Right, didn't Master give me a jade Qilin fruit? Should I give it a try? Xiao Hua thought, and took out the jade Qilin fruit. But looking at the ugly jade Qilin fruit, Xiao Hua hesitated. What if this jade Qilin fruit conflicts with the Buddhist Araira? Will there be another problem? I owe my true qi. Xiao Hua noticed the heart fire in his meridians at this time, because according to the secret method of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the heart fire should be completely absorbed by the rainbow epiphyllum, and new true qi would be produced. Now, the Xiao Hua didn't use the heart fire. The new true qi naturally wouldn't be produced. Damn it! Xiao Hua almost jumped. He wanted to stop and send a sound-transmitting talisman to ask eldest senior brother Xiang Yang or Master, but he had no way to explain the rainbow epiphyllum, and also no way to explain the Buddhist Araira. Will the heart fire extinguish on its own? It seems, according to eldest senior brother's teachings, without the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect, true chi and magic power would only boil for a while, then calm down. Just as Xiaohua thought about it, he immediately denied it. If it could be extinguished, it would have been extinguished long ago. He had tempered the Buddha's Saraira for so long, but it didn't extinguish. How could it be extinguished now? Maybe I should try the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect and try the jade Qilin fruit. Xiaohua hesitated for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, then made up his mind. He once again activated the secret method, using the heart fire to melt the jade Qilin fruit. Sure enough, after the jade Qilin fruit melted, it became a tricolored sphere the size of a soybean. But where should he put this tricolored liquid? When Xiaohua tried to send the liquid into his Naiwan palace to no avail, he faced a new problem. Fortunately, he only hesitated for a moment before he found an excellent position between the eyebrows of the Buddha's Saraira, which was also where the Naiwan palace was located. After placing the tricolored liquid of the jade Qilin fruit, Xiaohua still closed his eyes and activated the secret method to rotate the tricolored liquid. Sure enough, following the rotation of the tricolored liquid, the heart fire in his meridians was all sucked around the tricolored liquid. The heart fire surrounded the liquid, fiercely burning it. After an unknown period of time, the three-colored liquid was burned dry with a boom, and the heart flame was extinguished at the same time. Between the Buddha Saraira's eyebrows, a faintly discernible, tiny that couldn't be any smaller suddenly appeared, and a pure divine thought emerged spontaneously. Green blood for elixir core? God's guidance? For some reason, these two names appeared in Xiaohua's mind. At the same time, he recalled two extremely familiar cultivation technique chants. This time, Xiaohua wasn't surprised, nor did he open his eyes. Instead, he calmed his heart and recalled the chant of God's guidance in his mind over and over again, hoping to recall something else. Unfortunately, the chant flowed through his mind like a clear stream of water, pure and without any other impurities. After waiting for a long time, Xiaohua slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were somewhat perplexed as he pondered. That nameless chant is clearly the same as the exquisite leaf scripture, but it is a bit superficial. I'm afraid it was also lost by that Buddhist sect. And this God's guidance is actually a cultivation technique with 9 levels. It seems it is somewhat related to my Imperial Thunder sect's secret technique. If I were to compare the secret technique with the nameless chant, then this God's guidance would be the exquisite leaf scripture. Moreover, when I was trying to cultivate God's guidance, I faintly felt a kind of reaction from the location of the Naiwan Palace. It's just that this reaction is based on the feeling of the cultivation technique, so it can't be taken seriously. But the problem is, every human must have a Naiwan Palace. Where does a cultivator's divine thought come from if they don't have a Naiwan Palace? Since I can't feel the Naiwan Palace, then the Naiwan Palace must have an abnormality. And this abnormality isn't ordinary, it's serious. Even that Empress, with her incredible divine ability, couldn't sense it, so how can I deal with it now? After a few thoughts, Xiaohua dismissed the idea of using God's guidance to forcefully sense the Naiwan Palace. He already knew that in this cultivation world, there were countless people with remarkable abilities. His own background was unknown, so he was afraid that he had some background. Of course, if he didn't have absolute confidence, he would rather suffer some grievances than alert the enemy and put himself in a disadvantageous situation in advance. The newly born divine thought was extremely weak. It was far inferior to Xiaohua's previous perception, not to mention the Buddhist sense that had undergone a metamorphosis. Xiaohua tried to control his divine thought to familiarize himself with his new divine thought. He also used the records of the exquisite leaf scripture to control his Buddhist sense. Comparing the two, Xiaohua was somewhat confused. These two things seemed to have the same use, but he felt that there were some differences in the nature of the two. It was like looking at a mountain. Divine thought, you could see the mountain, but you could also see mountains after mountains. On the other hand, Buddhist sense could see the mountain, but it could also see the mountain within the mountain. Good. I'm afraid I'll have to ask Master about this kind of profound matter. But immediately after, Xiao Hua thought to himself, since Qin Mingwei and the others have been investigating this matter for several decades, Master, I'm afraid he might not know. At this moment, the command medallion in Xiao Hua's bosom suddenly changed. Xiao Hua impatiently took out the command medallion, flew into the air, and opened the formation. He saw that outside the formation, Zhen Ming was also impatient. As soon as he saw Xiao Hua, he berated, Xiao Hua, since you know that today is the day to turn the flame dawn grass, why didn't you open the formation? Could it be that you've already forgotten the lesson from 2 years ago? What? Xiao Hua was stunned. He didn't expect that he had only gone into seclusion once to break through the barrier of the 12th layer of the refinement realm and refine the Buddha Saraira. All of a sudden, he had spent a year's time. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and smiled apologetically. Senior Marshal Brother Zhen, disciple returned late yesterday. This morning, disciple went to the mountain to pick the flame dawn grass. I was afraid of delaying Senior Marshal Brother's matter, so, no need to say any more. Quickly bring the flame dawn grass. Zhen Ming stretched out his hand and shouted, Oh, Senior Marshal Brother, please wait a moment. Disciple still has some left. I'll go pick it right away. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and quickly flew back. Fortunately, Zhen Ming only frowned slightly and didn't follow him. He stood in the air and looked around in boredom. Not long after, Xiao Hua turned back and handed over the storage pouch. Zhen Ming opened it and looked, then handed an empty storage pouch to Xiao Hua and asked, What about the other spirit herbs? Do they continue to grow? Xiao Hua knew that he wouldn't come in, so he smiled and said, Most of them can't be grown, but some have just sprouted. I knew it was impossible. Zhen Ming didn't say anything else and flew back to the Thunder Hall. Looking at Zhen Ming's departing figure, Xiao Hua faintly smiled. He took out the command medallion and closed the Eastern Ridges formation. Then, he circulated his magic power and used the lightning escape technique to rush towards the myriad Thunder Valley. Far away in the Xuanyan Mountain of the Xuanyan School, there was a towering mountain peak. This mountain peak was different from the other mountains around it. There was no forest or grass on the mountain, only a layer of ice and craggy rocks. At the bottom of the mountain, there was a huge cave. From the top of the cave, there were many ice pillars as thick as a human arm hanging down, blocking the cave. At this time, in front of the cave, Jieqiong Fairy was leading several Foundation Establishment stage disciples to land on the smooth ground. Open the seal. Jieqiong Fairy's face had a trace of joy, but also more confusion as she whispered, Yes, disciple understands. 2 older cultivators took 2 steps forward. Each of them held a crystal-clear jade disc in their hands. When they circulated their magic power, the jade disc emitted a sky-blue brilliance. Then, from the jade disc, half of an ice sparrow flew out. Each of them flapped a wing, which looked very strange. The 2 halves of the ice sparrow merged together in mid-air, forming a complete ice sparrow. Then, the 2 disciples looked at each other, circulated their magic power at the same time, pointed their hands, and shouted, Go! The ice sparrow slammed into the icicles in front of the cave. The entire cave flashed with the same sky-blue brilliance and was annihilated. Instantly, the numerous icicles disappeared, revealing the dark cave entrance. Jieqiong Fairy didn't seem to hesitate. She flew into the cave entrance and flew down the mountain. The cave was winding and extremely deep. After flying for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they arrived at a place that looked like an ice palace. This was also a rather large space. Everything inside was carved out of ice. There were birds and beasts, famous flowers and strange plants, and there were even some things of the mortal world that were sparkling and translucent. Jieqiong Fairy flew to the center of the ice palace. In front of an exquisite house, she patted her hand and took out a token. She threw it at the door of the house. When the token touched the cold door, it immediately flashed a brilliance and sank into the door. In a moment, the whole house strangely melted, revealing a round hole on the ground. Jieqiong Fairy was not in a hurry to enter the cave. Instead, she released her divine sense and looked around before flying into the cave. After the cave, there was another deep cave that was bitingly cold. The four walls of this deep cave were inlaid with a lot of moonstones. But in the cold, the moonstones' brilliance was dim, as if they couldn't go very far. When Jieqiong Fairy and a group of Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators behind her entered this deep cave, they immediately looked at the 5 Qi Refining Stage cultivators who were sitting cross-legged around the cave. Clap, clap. Jieqiong Fairy patted her hand, and the 5 cultivators opened their eyes at the same time. Their faces were full of joy as they looked at Jieqiong Fairy. You all wait here. This time's cultivation ends here. Yes, disciple understands. We will follow martial ancestors' order. The 5 cultivators stood up at the same time. One of them was Xiao Mao. Go. Each of you take one and follow me back to Golden Goose Mountain. Jieqiong Fairy looked around and scolded. Yes, disciple understands. 5 of the Foundation Establishment Stage cultivators stepped forward, and each of them grabbed a disciple and followed Jieqiong Fairy out of the deep cave. Not knowing how far away from Shuanya Mountain, in a mountain forest surrounded by white clouds, countless birds and beasts were leisurely flying. Dang! A bell rang. Not only did it scare away the birds and beasts, but it also shook the clouds away. Gradually, in the depths of the mountain forest at the foot of the mountain, in front of a magnificent palace, a white-clothed cultivator was quickly entering the palace. This person was the Foundation Establishment Stage. Li Zongbao, that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.